Hey, welcome back. With us today is Jay Jursich. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, man?
Oh, doing great. I had a very busy day with the wife today. We did a bunch of errands, run around. We caught a quick little matinee movie. We should have done that. I could tell you last time we saw a matinee movie. So that was pretty fun, hanging out with the wife.
Nice.
Yeah. So everyone gets a little introduction. So with us today is Jay. He is 43 years young, which is perfect. I'm 49. Married, a father of two, an analytical chemist by profession, has an advanced degree in biochemistry. It's also study phytochemist. We'll have to talk about that because I had no idea what that is. I'm sure a lot of people won't either. Over 10 years of experience in homebrewing, does exoplanet photometry with his own backyard observatory, which is fascinating. My son would love to talk to you about that one for sure. Likes to study macroeconomics in the spare time. Maintains a fully automated 220-gallon saltwater reef tank. That's a mouthful. Former rugby player, I could definitely see that. Scuba diver, scuba diver, lives in the Arizona desert, which he just told me that in February 28th. It's 90 degrees out there, which is just wow, it's warm. Most importantly, he's a brewer who admits that he's a little extra, or he's very extra. Sorry, did I miss anything?
I do bow hunting, but we don't talk about that.
All right, nice. So what kind of game
people don't like that.
do what do you go after?
Deer, elk, javelina, mostly.
What's a cabalina?
Javelina.
Javelina,
It's
what is
like
that?
it's like a desert pig. It's not technically a pig. It's part of the rodent family, but they're like wild pigs from the desert. If you Google
Interesting.
javelina, Javelina,
Okay.
javelina, it's like a wild desert pig. So. But
Does they
they're like mostly blind, so it's easy to get up close to them. But also they're really aggressive, so they don't like that. So yeah, it's fun.
do
Not
they
super
taste good?
successful, but yeah, I mean they taste like sirloin. Like they're not super gamey, so that's good. They eat
Oh,
cactuses, so but also they get into like they tear up golf courses and they get into people's garbage and stuff. They're kind of a pest in the city area, but out at the Salt River where I do my hunting, they're more natural habitat.
that's
So
pretty
it's pretty
interesting. I've
cool.
never even heard of
Yeah.
those. Yeah. So my cousin, which my first episode did, he's an avid hunter, and
Mhm.
he's the only hunter on our grandfather's side for the most part. Like my grandfather hunted, my uncle Tony hunted. I'm not sure anyone else did. My cousin did, but none of my other cousins hunted. Like I went once with my dad. 16. I enjoyed it. I shot a doe. It was all right. I just never gone back. So I've been kicking around the
Yeah.
idea about going back and going hunting with my dad because I think he owns 22 acres, and the neighbor behind
Oh,
him has
nice.
40 acres. So he has like
Yeah,
60
there's gotta
somewhat
be
acres he
deer
can hunt.
everywhere
Oh,
there.
in Michigan,
Yeah,
yeah, it's all over the
yeah,
place, right? So
everywhere. Everything
a
east of the
bunch.
Mississippi is
Yeah.
flat, forest, perfect land. Yeah, it's scrub desert out here, so we do deer hunt out here in the desert, but it's hard work. So especially with
Yeah.
bow
Okay.
hunting, you gotta get, 20 yards from them, and deer don't like that. They
No,
peace
they
out. When you
don't.
get to like 50 yards, they're like,
Yep.
"Bye."
Yeah.
Then they're gone. So
Is it whitetail or is it mule out that way?
we have both. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
both. Okay.
There's muleys in the higher country. There are some in the eastern part of the state where the superstitions are. But there's also whitetails out here too, yeah.
That's interesting.
They're
I didn't
technically
know that
called
part.
Coues deer, so they're like a subspecies of whitetails.
Okay. But you still get the famous whitetail wave as they're running away from you.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
I always thought that was funny because we have a bunch. I got a room. I have a pasture behind my house, and there's like I don't know. There's like a nest of like 5 or 6 of them does who just kind of hang out
I'm
together. You see them
sure,
all the
yeah.
time, just running around. It's really
Yep.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful
Cool.
creatures for sure. So
Yeah.
let's kind of get into like the opening question. So you proclaimed to be a beer snob. I was as well too. Then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had you brewed a beer with a buddy of yours, and then you kind of got hooked. Kind of walk us
Yeah.
through that first brew day. How did that go for you?
Yeah, so even before that, I've known for a long time that well, first of all, I've been drinking beer since I was, 12 years. So, but I've known for a long time that I wanted to brew my own beer. I also knew, like, how I do things. Like I said, like, in the intro, you said I'm extra, and it's true. Like, I like to do it right. I like to do it, like, the best possible way,
Hmm.
using the best possible modern science. I mean, I knew that was how I was gonna do it. So I've been kicking it down the road for a while because I knew it was like, once I go into this, I'm gonna be, like, gung ho, and my
Yeah.
wife kinda knows, like, "I don't want you doing more hobbies," and I was like, "Okay, okay." So, but, yeah, so my one buddy was gonna make what was it? A habanero porter with a
Oh.
prickly pear habanero porter. So his dad's yard is very lush. He has a garden here in the desert in Tempe, Tempe is a suburb of Phoenix,
Okay.
and, very, very lush gardens, very well manicured, like, gardening is his thing, and so he had a really nice prickly pear plant that fruited very well. I don't know how much you know about prickly pear fruit. You can eat the petals and the
Hmm.
fruits, but he wanted to make that into a porter. Him and his brother were making the beer one day, or they were gonna make it, and they invited me when I came watch. They had a much older system, so they had, like, a two-pot Herms set up,
Yeah.
with recirculation. It was much more DIY on their side, so they had, like, I think it was, like, a Sankey keg that they cut the top off as their
Hmm.
brew pot,
Yep.
and then used the boiler, the propane boiler underneath. Lots of, like, manually made valves and stuff, which nothing wrong with that, that's if you like doing that stuff. The thing that I don't like about the DIY stuff, even when I do it, is, like, it never works to the level that I want it to. I'd rather
Hmm.
just buy high precision materials that I know are gonna do exactly what I need so that I
Hmm.
can focus on process improvements rather than fighting my gear. If I have to fight my gear, I don't wanna do the thing. That's
Exactly.
my
Makes
thing. Like,
sense. Yep.
if you're gonna spend your time and effort, of which you don't have a lot, especially when you got 2 kids, you can't be spending half the time mucking around with a valve that's leaking and stuff. Like, I don't got time for that. So yeah, so he was basically just introduced me how to do it. His brother's actually a medical doctor, so I was able to pick his brain about the chemistry of the beer a lot.
Mm.
And it's funny because you might say, "Oh, medical doctor, they know a lot." They don't really know much chemistry. I hope he's not listening. But yeah, no. So you mean he knew some, but I was like asking more and more and more, and he's like, "Oh, I'll have to look that up." And I was like, "I don't think you know this." So after that, I was like, "Okay, I get it. I see how this works."
Hmm.
That was a full grain mash. That was an all
Hmm.
grain method. And then I was like, "Okay, I did that." So I bought the claw hammer system,
Oh, cool.
the 110 brew in a bag style. I think that more fits with my lifestyle and the amount of time that I can allocate to it. Like, people say brew day, and there's truth to that, but I can do a full brew in about 4 hours or less. So I think my record time is like 3.5 hours with cleanup. Oh, when I'm really kind of ripping and bang, bang, banging through. So I can get up in the morning at 7 o'clock on a Saturday and have everything cleaned up by lunchtime, and the girls are rolling out of bed playing with their iPads. And so it doesn't eat up the whole day, and I think that's one of the reasons my wife doesn't give me too much shit about it. But yeah, so I bought the claw hammer setup, and I brewed 1 extract. I was like, "Well, I'll do extract first, get the hang of it." I did it 1 time. It was, partial mash or whatever they call it, or partial
Mhm.
boil, or I don't even remember.
It's a
And
partial mache.
I was like,
Yep.
"Okay." Yeah, and I was like, "Okay, I understand." I'm going straight to all grain. Like, I wanna have full control over every step of the process to as much detail as is possible.
Okay.
And when you buy extract, you're subject to whatever the manufacturing whims are of the manufacturer. And in the beer industry, just like many industries, there's not the type of standards that I personally want. So I come from analytical chemistry, so I'm used to inspecting certificates of analysis for my raw materials and for my products that I buy and that I use in the lab. And you can't really buy that at the hobby level, at the commercial scale, and if you can, you don't have, like, lot level specificity. So, for example,
Mm.
when I buy hops, you might buy some Hallertau. There's no expiration date on them. There's often not a lot number on them. You can't get the matching paperwork that says this lot was harvested from this year and whatever, because that matters. Like, if you talk to professional brewers, they go smell the hops from that year's harvest and say, "Okay, I'll take X amount of that quantity," because they can be different year to year. Because like what this is where phytochemistry comes in. Phytochemistry is just the chemistry of plants, so it's a fancy word for it. So what I've learned in the 5 years I spent doing phytochemistry for a dietary supplement company was that plants, depending on where they're grown, how they're grown, conditions are grown, is there some drought, yada yada. Maybe there was some uh, viruses going on that infected
Mhm.
the plant for that year. Like, that can impact not just the production, how much yield you get, but
Right.
also what is what is the composition of the phytochemicals, the things that we care about, like in the cannabis world, it'd be like the terpenes and the cannabinoids and the
Mhm.
cannabinoids and the THC content composition, but also like in hops, which are a cousin of the cannabis family. Um, like, what is the terpene profile? What is the humalone, isohumalone, cohumalone? Like, what is the relative profile of all those different
Mhm.
compounds? You
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
get a general map that says, Hallertau will be this, middle fur is this, nugget is that, but that's not going to be true every year to the same level. It might be more or less true, but that's not
Mhm.
exactly true. And if you're like me, trying to go for perfection, that ambiguity is not acceptable. So that's why I went straight to all grain. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get as much detail about my raw materials as I can get
Mhm.
because I don't want uncertainty of raw materials and uncertainty of process and uncertainty of mistakes in just doing things, procedure that will just compile on top of each other. So I just said I want full control over as many details as I can. If I have to buy something special like an electronic controller in this case, okay, fine. I'll worry about try and get all the things under control that I can, and then I have to worry about process and procedure influence later. So that's where like the extra part of me with the analytical chemistry comes in and says like I want to do every single step as best as it can possibly be done. And it's quite hard to do.
Yeah, yeah, because when you brought up like hops alone, like I mean, you could have a hop from 2024, for example. Let's pick on. Oh, I can't think one off the top of my head, but let's say it says 7.4 percent alpha
Alpha
acids, right?
acids. Yep.
And then you get 2025, now it's 8.4,
Yeah.
and you're like,
So
oh wow,
the
that's 1.2 more percentage. So like now I need to adjust my recipe for this offset, right? So
and
so
and that's true, and I agree. That's absolutely a thing. And they have alpha acid calculators. I think the Stonehelm calc or whatever is the one I
okay.
always use because it's the first one on Google when I say alpha acid calculator because I want to be lazy. But there's another layer to that, which is which are the acids that are actually present that are responsible for that number? They could actually have subjective bitterness quantities that are different. So, for example, 7.4% of I don't remember what the bittering compounds are off the top of my head right now. Of one compound can taste more bitter than 7.4% of different compositions of acids
Okay,
that are the same in quantity, but they're different compositionally, and so they're actually adding more bitterness, more IBU because of what they are.
that's
I don't know if that makes
interesting.
sense or if it
Oh, a
went
little
over your
bit,
head or
yeah.
not, but like it's of that 7.4%, you have maybe 10 compounds that are
Mhm.
summed together to get to 7.4. But it could easily be the case that when you have 8.5, you don't have that same set of compounds, just slightly more of them. You have different compounds.
Right, right,
And
right.
therefore the IBU they contribute is actually different.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's an assumption there that 7 is to 8 no matter what the composition of 7 is and the composition 8 is. That's not true. But to get to that level of detail, you basically need to do like Headspace GC or GCMS and a lot of analytical techniques that no one is going to do except for me. And you sneak samples into your lab and go to your chemist and be like, hey, man, run this when you're done. Let me know what it looks like. Can't say I haven't done that before, So I've done it before. But yeah, so there's like that level of information is often missing, right? Like if it was up to
Yeah.
me, if I could have the perfect world, when I buy a given hop, I'd buy a C of A, and that C of A, I don't know if you guys are cannabis people. I'm not a cannabis person, but I know a lot about the industry because I was adjacent to it for a while. You can buy what is your terpene profile, right? Like how much alpha pinene is in it, and how much of linalool is in it, and all these different essential oils. You can
Right,
buy
right.
a lot based on what profile that is. If you go essential oil shopping, if you're an essential oil person, it's the same thing. You can buy a lot according to that profile. Can't really do that with hops. Certainly not at the hobby level. Maybe the pros probably can. They got their own lab. They can run these things. Headspace GCs and GCFIDs aren't that expensive anyway. But um, but like if you really are like me, trying to do what I do the way I do it, as a hobbyist, it's really hard to get that information. And so
Mm,
that's inherent uncertainty based on the raw materials alone that I want to minimize as much as possible, but also I want all my gear to not add to that uncertainty. I don't want my
mm,
thermometer to be low quality thermometer that I'm like,
yeah,
well, is it 78 or is it 84? That's not good enough. Like, I don't like the fact that the thermometers are basically plus or minus 1 degree. Like, I want them plus or minus 0.1 degrees, you know?
fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, the claw hammer system, if those guys are listening, like, their system's great, I love it, but I notice when I take my thermopen and stick it in the top,
Mhm.
and I get the temperature at the bottom, there's a temperature gradient that shows up. I don't know what that gradient is, and I don't know how to control it to homogenize it, but if all the grain that I put in first is towards the bottom and the grain that I put in second is towards the top, now I'm having a differential mash happening that I didn't
Mhm.
want. You
Yeah.
have to make assumptions of homogeneity that process-wise, you gotta stir, every 5 or 10 minutes to get the bottom to go to the top because it's a top to bottom thermal climb that
Mhm.
you get. And so, those are the types of things that I'm trying to process out, and I don't want bad gear or questionable quality gear to add to that problem.
Right. So, I mean, okay, I guess going back to the grain, the temperature difference. So, like, my kettle
Mhm,
boil has a temperature probe probably 4 inches from the bottom,
mhm.
maybe five
Right,
inches.
yep.
But I don't really trust it. I think it's kind of off a little bit. I've tried
Yeah.
tweaking it, and it's still not spot on. But I do have like a digital thermometer. But like you said, I don't stir every 5 to 10 minutes. I stir every well, it depends how long my mash is, but let's say every 15 to 20 minutes, I'll go there and I'll stir.
Yeah,
And
right.
then,
Mhm.
and then I'll take a temperature and then I'll
Yep.
adjust the heat and stuff like that. Cause I do propane,
Yeah,
I do brew in a bag. So I have a little more dance. I don't have like a controller that can kick on, kick off and maybe try to maintain
right,
152 or whatever.
right. But
So
even if you
mine's,
do,
yeah,
the heater source is at the bottom, like you just said.
true. Yeah.
So the grain that's right around the heating element gets really
Oh,
hot until it hits the threshold of the thermometer, the saying, "Okay, now I'm registering, 80 or 90 or whatever your mash temperature is, 126,
hmm
134." I use Fahrenheit numbers, even though I'm a scientist. Because the temperature of the liquid right around the heating element is certainly much higher. And so you have
hmm.
to burn part of it so that the average is okay. But you're now tossing out, I shouldn't say tossing out, but now you're overexerting the enzymes that are in the
Yeah.
mash towards the heating element. And the same thing was the same problem. I'm pointing over here because that's where I do my brewing. So
Fair
that's
enough.
I'm where I'm sitting. It's like right there. But when I do my brewing, like I have the same problem because the propane comes from the bottom
Yeah.
and the heat comes from the bottom, so the bottom is blazing hot, and then eventually the top gets to the temperature it needs to be. Then I turn it
Yeah.
off. I'm like, well, how hot did that bottom really get? I don't know. There's not really a great way to know unless I have like 8 thermometers stacked in there. And if that was a device that existed, I would buy it. Like a meter stick, you jam it
Yeah.
in, and at every temperature, every spot, it gives you a temperature. Absolutely, I would buy that thing. Claw hammer, get on it.
Get out. There you go. Yeah, that's perfect.
Just stainless
Yeah.
steel like rod.
I guess the only way to really get around is just have something stirring it nonstop, right? Just to kind of keep everything
Exactly, and with
moving
the
and
recycling system that Clawhammer
yeah.
uses, I think it's good, but a I still see a thermocline that I don't want to exist.
Right. So how do you think how efficient your beer turns out then because of that issue?
I'm always low on my efficiency against, like, the
Okay.
Brewfather estimates,
Okay.
and I don't know if it's because of that, I don't know if maybe because I use the homebrew store to
I'll crush
mill the
it.
grain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't measure my particle sizes, which I kinda want to, but the thing is, like, if you buy grain that's not crushed,
Hmm.
you get an average particle size. So you say each grain is, a half inch in size, but some might be a quarter inch and some might be three-quarters of an inch,
Hmm. Yep.
non-symmetrically distributed. So if you crush them according to a certain width, the credit card width or whatever people recommend,
Hmm.
some of them are gonna pass through and some of them are gonna not, and the difference between doing that once for one grain and again and again, again for all the grains in that particular mash bill,
Hmm.
and then again the next time you make that beer is greater than the difference of just not doing it at all.
Hmm.
And so I think that there's just too much uncertainty associated with that, that I'm not gonna bother to kind of futz around with it. I do have my own grain mill, I have milled my own grains. I didn't see a huge difference between letting the
Not fair
store do it and
enough.
me do it. So I could just call them, be like, "Hey, I need XYZ. I'll pick it up tomorrow. I'll pay your $50 and we're done." Like I don't gotta mess with it. I don't gotta
Yeah,
think
true.
about it. I buy fresh yeast. I'm also lazy. I don't want to keep a yeast culture going on for forever. I have 2 kids. It's guaranteed to get contaminated. I can't put anything in the fridge because there's open yogurts and orange peels.
Right.
Yeah. If you have kids or no?
Dude, they're all grown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you get
my
it.
so mine's between I have a 31-year-old, I have a 26-year-old and 22-year-old. I have a
Mm,
2-year-old granddaughter, so I definitely get
mm.
having a
Yeah,
little
it's just random
young kid
stuff
running
shows
around.
up, like,
Oh
"Why is there a
yeah.
sucker under the couch?"
Yeah, things you forget when your kids are all grown.
Yeah, so I just ain't nobody got time for that, so, I just buy all the fresh yeast, I just
That's
buy everything
perfect,
fresh,
right?
I put it into
Yeah.
the store, I say, "Here's my whole order, put it all together for me," I pick it up, and then I brew that Saturday, and it's a little bit of convenience on that side.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a local homebrew store anymore. The one
Oh,
we
that stinks.
had turned into a brewery that sadly shut down. He's reopening,
Oh, damn.
but
Well, that's good.
it was, I think, it was a lease issue. I think they wanted too much money
Mm,
for it. Then I think water was like like another problem. I think they had a water line break, so it's like water wasn't like
oh,
quite
that
where it
stinks,
was, and
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So the
Right,
closest one is in Asheville, so where Clawhammer is, right? But again, that's like 45, 50-minute drive, which I don't mind doing, but it's only for like a 5-minute purchase. That's my issue. Well, hour and a half of my day is to round trip
right,
driving for a
no,
5-minute
that's
purchase. So I have to make a
yeah,
day of Asheville. So then I don't get to brew that day. So there's all that. So I usually buy either for like more beer or great fermentation
right.
or a few other odds and ends. One thing I like about great fermentation is you can buy by the I think quarter of an ounce if you want to
Nice.
get that minute. I was
Yes.
letting them crush, but I like crush it myself.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of a control issue like that, I guess, in a way. So I was letting other people crush it, and sometimes they didn't look crush all the kind of like you were saying. I was seeing like whole grain chunks in there. I'm like going, what the
Yeah.
crap? So then I'd have to pick some of them out and then just take a hammer and bust them
Mm.
upside a bag, try to get them so I get as much efficiency as possible. So yeah, you pretty much covered all the chemist approach to brewing side of everything, which is phenomenal. I thought that was great.
Well,
But
that's not all of it. We didn't even do the water salts
no, no, no,
discussion
no.
yet.
We're still getting down there.
Oh,
But
okay.
like my
Oh,
questions about being an analytical
yeah.
chemist and your
Oh, yeah,
biochemistry
about yeah.
degrees
So
and
that's like the approach that I take when I'm
yeah,
thinking about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Those are the things I'm looking at. I'm always looking at the thing I'm doing and the uncertainty associated with what you're doing. Like, what don't you know, and how much of that don't you know? And it's really
yeah.
hard sometimes. But that's what
So
analytical chemistry really is.
do you think they don't supply spec sheets on purpose? I guess I don't know.
I think
I
enough
don't
people
say they're
don't care
hiding
about
stuff,
it.
right? Okay,
No,
maybe.
I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just
Yeah,
it's not industry standard at the hobby level, right? At the commercial level, it probably is. Here's a
right.
good example of my homebrew store. I asked them one day,
Hmm.
"Do you sell calcium chloride?" Of course you do. Here you go. I said, "Is it calcium chloride? Is it calcium chloride dihydrate?"
Mm,
You know the difference?
I do not.
One of them is calcium chloride, the molecule you care about,
Yeah.
and it has just by itself, and the other one is the dihydrate, meaning it has two water molecules attached to it for every one molecule of calcium chloride,
Hmm.
which it's not a problem per se. The problem comes in is when you think you're adding 5 grams of calcium chloride, but what you're really adding is 5 grams of calcium chloride dihydrate, and therefore, and whoever's gonna, what nerds on the internet gonna check my math right now, because therefore, 3.5 grams of that 5 is calcium chloride. The other 1.5 grams is water
Gotcha. Yeah,
because it
yeah,
dilutes
yeah.
the mass of
Hmm.
calcium in the calcium chloride by the mass of two waters.
Yeah, that
And
makes
so the
sense.
only way to really know that is if they're accurately labeling it, which they do not, and if you can get a C of A from the manufacturer. And so I asked the homebrew shop if they could get me a C of A, and they said yes. When I went back the second time, they said they looked at the C of A and it said calcium chloride. It was not calcium chloride dihydrate. So that's great,
Hmm.
right? Calcium problem solved. I know how to calculate calcium chloride, calcium additions.
Hmm.
I know I have calcium chloride. Cool. I live in Arizona, so I'm pretty good. You in the East Coast are not because calcium chloride is super hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs water onto the
Hmm.
surface of it.
Yep.
So if you've ever left it open to the air in a reasonably humid environment like yourself, it gets kind of like sticky and slushy like. How much water has absorbed onto that surface?
Right.
There's
Exactly.
no way to know
Yeah.
unless you measure it, right?
Mm.
So what you gotta do is you gotta measure out 5 grams of that slushy stuff, put it in your oven and bake it at, 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple hours until take it out, put it back on the scale, see if it loses mass, put it back in the oven, take it back out, put it back on the scale. I'm serious. This is what you gotta do. This
Yeah.
it's actually called loss and drying by mass loss. It's an
Okay.
analytical chemistry technique. But basically all you're doing is drying it until the mass doesn't change anymore, which means there's no more water to lose. So you can do the same thing with calcium chloride dihydrate, turning into calcium chloride, but because it's embedded in the crystal, you got to do a little bit more work. It's not just on the surface of the crystal, it's part of the crystal structure. So it's better to just know what you're starting with and calculate against that, as opposed to start with one, let it get sloppy, and then try and dry it back to the original state, which may or may not happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so it adds uncertainty as to how much
Mm-hmm.
calcium am I actually adding here. When I add that 1 gram of calcium chloride or that 2 grams of calcium chloride for my recipe, am I actually only adding half as much or a third as much? Like, I don't know. If that's the case, don't measure it. Just dump it in. Like, you might as well just do that. But here's the problem. Even if you do everything I just said, right?
Yes.
You buy the calcium chloride, you keep it dry. You live in Arizona. You put it in a little decant or a dehydrator with the rice and all of the tricks. Then you measure it out. We say, cool. I want to have, I don't know, 85 ppm of calcium in my mash. So I'm going to add 2.62 grams of calcium chloride dry in there. So you put it in. How much calcium was in that mash wheat that you put in the grains? What's the contribution to the total calcium from the grain? They don't report that. They don't measure that. Most people don't even ask that question. There is definitely some in there. I just don't know how much. So that's why, even though I want to be super extra, I try not to go super anal about it and like, well, it's got to be 2.62000. Like, it's like, all right, 2.6 ish, because there's going to
Yeah,
be some. And then, I think I have 5 gallons of water in there, but it might be 4.85. Now everything's off by X percent. So there's so much other uncertainty in other places that you can only gain so much before you're bottlenecked at a different spot.
right. So is there issues with like usually we brought calcium chloride, so Epsom salt or gypsum or baking soda? Is there like any issues with those that people may not know about? Or
I'm not sure of any issues.
okay,
Calcium sulfate, uh, magnesium sulfate. I mean, those are also hydrate salts. So most of the online calculators that I've seen, I kind of played around with, like, Brewfather and Brewer's Friend, and there's a water calculator one that I forget. It was supposed to be just water. Those ones, I don't get the same answers they get. And I'm not exactly sure why. For some of them, I kind of know because I make some assumptions that they probably don't. So, for example, when you take calcium carbonate, chalk, to increase your pH, you put it in there and you kind of assume that there's going to be some equilibrium that's set between the calcium carbonate and the bicarbonate, and you might lose a little bit to carbon dioxide and water degradation. Like there's a natural equilibrium that gets set up. So when I'm calculating the carbonate concentration, I don't try to calculate like total hardness. I just calculate carbonate based on calcium carbonate. Um, so I think that might explain why I get slightly different answers from some of the other calculators.
mm,
But even for simple things like sodium chloride, like the sodium concentrations I get will be different. And I don't know if that's because everyone says, "Oh, table salt," right? Well, table salt has an anti-caking agent. I think it's sodium ferricyanate in it, right?
okay,
And they don't tell you how much they put in there. So if you put in a gram, 1.00
mm,
grams of sodium chloride, you're getting some amount of sodium chloride and some amount of that anti-caking agent. And my
right.
suspicion is that Morton doesn't control that so that every bottle of Morton that you
It's
use
totally
has the
different.
exact same proportion. You don't know. So what I did is I bought
Yeah.
canning salt, which is
Okay.
pure sodium chloride. No, so pickling salt, canning
Mm-hmm.
salt, same
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's pure calcium, sodium chloride. It doesn't have the anti-caking agent in it, but it's much more hygroscopic now, and so it turns into chunks, kind of like brown sugar does when you
Mm-hmm.
let brown sugar sit around,
Yeah.
which is fine because I'll just bang it up and then whatever. But I feel much more confident that that sodium chloride and is contributing the right sodium amount that I want, which is much more important for a lot of, especially the beers that I like to drink. So, I have much softer water profiles in a lot of my beers. And so I think it's more important that I get close as possible to the sodium number, um, than if I have some unknown mystery amount of ferricyanate taking up some mass that I don't know how much, which
Yeah, no,
changes over
that's
time.
pretty easy. I didn't know that about tables. So I don't think I've ever paid that much attention to it. I'm not a
Look
big.
on the label. Just next time you go
I'll
in your
have to
kitchen,
do
look in
that.
the
Yeah.
label.
I know
Yeah.
I kind of shy away from salt in general. I'm not like a salty kind of person. I like salty foods
Sure.
a whole lot, so I kind of try to
Hmm.
avoid it when I can. Also, if we're going out to dinner, then I have no control over it. So
Right. Yeah.
I digress on that. So I mean, so we're kind of talking a little about I guess salt chemistry. So I guess we can go ahead and jump ahead and start talking about some water chemistry. So I'm kind of curious what water do you prefer? Do you go like a tap? Do you go distilled,
Oh,
spring?
no. Okay, so first of all, I'm in Arizona. My TDS, total dissolved solid, out of the tap is on average 750 ppm. So if you pay attention to water hardness, that is
Hmm.
off the charts stupidly high. Like it is insane. Now, the benefit for me is that I have that 220-gallon fish tank that you're talking about. So when I make salt water, I buy really high quality purity salt, and I make what's called ultra pure type 2 water, actually type 1 water, in my garage. So
Okay.
I have an RODI system that I use
Oh, nice.
to generate 8.2 mega ohm water. And so I make all my beer out of that. In fact, just recently I started making my coffee out of that too. It makes a big difference. And, if you're, so I'm from Chicago originally, so if you're a
Fair enough.
pizza snob like I
Yeah.
am, um like, people say, "Oh, New York has the best pizza," and it's like, well, they make the dough from New York tap water.
Yeah.
New York tap water is traditionally known to be extremely pure because comes from the mountains of New York, and so their tap water is, like, on average, like, 10 ppm total dissolved solids. So it's extremely soft. Like, when you look at, like, water profiles of places around the world, like in England or Ireland or, Central Europe, that's where those different water profiles come from. It's like this is what our water is out of the ground. So this is our profile. And based on that, we can make good beers like this, but we can't make these other types of beers. And so by starting from a true zero, a true scratch zero, I can make any water profile I want, and I just buy the salts that I need to make that happen. A lot of people start with RO, which is pretty close to what I have. RO is usually considered to be anywhere between like 0 and 10 ppm TDS. Um, the first stage of my water purification system in my garage is RO. So it's
Okay.
RO that feeds into deionization chambers, which then feeds into just the reservoir. And so I just basically take the RO water and I purify it once more with cation anion mixed resin, which pulls out all the ions and replaces them with hydroxide or H ions, which just ends up making water. So and so my water is ultra pure to start with, which is really nice. So yeah, I can use it for when I make dough. Like I make bread. When I
Hmm.
was in college, I worked at a bread store, so I made a lot of
Yeah,
bread.
there you
So
go.
even
Yeah.
nowadays, I'll still make bread. And so I can use it for that or anything where like the water chemistry matters.
Hmm.
Like when I'm making pasta for the kids or mac and cheese, I'll just use the tap water. The kids don't know, and I'm not eating that shit anyway. But like if I'm making something that like matters, like coffee that I care about, I'm not a coffee snob, but I do like to try to make my coffee taste better. I
Hmm.
have noticed it does taste much better if I do I want to say like 80 to 90% ultra pure water, and then I just use tap for the rest because our tap
Okay.
is very hard, total dissolved solids. Mostly it's silicates, which are undissolved solids. Um, but it's also reasonably hard. I think our pH is like 7.4. And so a little bit of basicity, I think, helps the coffee taste less acrid. And so when you're doing the extraction part, which is basically what coffee is, it's an extraction. A little bit of basicity helps pull some of those acids um, out of
Okay.
uh, out of the coffee into it, so it tastes better. That's just kind of empirically what I've noticed, but I don't measure my coffee, I don't mess around with it the way I do with my beer. That's mostly like, I'm in the morning, I'll just mix these 2 liquids, I'm good.
Yeah, there was an article I read about like adding salt to your coffee. I've never done that myself, but it was supposed to help it
Yeah, it's the
enhance
same exact
flavors.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I had a buddy of mine that actually wanted to start a company, making what those hydration salt packs are
Hmm.
for, like,
Yep.
athletes? Making that, but for, like, coffee snobs. So it's like, okay, if you're gonna make a 8 cup of coffee pot, here's your salt thing, pour it into your tap water or into ideally RO water, and the ion profile would be correct. So he wanted me to do basically what I'm doing now for my beer, but for this company, and then he was gonna take over, like, the business stuff, the ordering of raw materials and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
ran
Yeah.
an analytical lab at the time, so we'll get the raws tested and, all that stuff. But never went anywhere, mostly because of his ADHD, but I think it's a cool idea.
No, that is
Have, like,
pretty
little
neat.
packets
Yeah.
of salt. Like, they do it for athletes already. It's like, "Oh, you want your" because like,
Hmm.
even me, like, in the summertime, like, I work out in the summer. This is not summer, this is 90. But, like, when it's, 110 outside and I'm running on South Mountain, you know, like you feel it. Like you lose a lot of ions and a lot of stuff that you don't know you lose, like lithium, for example, when you work out. And so having a salt pack that is made from the not just the typical sodium and magnesium
Hmm. Hmm.
and calcium, which like everything is made out of, but like a little bit of lithium and a touch of nickel and a touch of cobalt. So like these other things that you also lose, properly balanced. That's really the right way to go. So the same concept just applies to beer, coffee, bread, like whatever you're doing. If you really want to do it the right way, that's the way to do it. So.
So if someone were, I guess, like it's a little bit of like advice moment here. So if somebody that doesn't have like an RO system, would they be better off just buying like distilled water from the store
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
building their own profile that way?
Yeah, I'm on Reddit, so I think that's where we met.
Yes, sir.
Um, you like if this is what people on the homebrewing sub and Reddit said. I agree with them. If you don't really care, you just want something to drink and have some fun. If your water tastes fine, your beer will taste fine. I don't want to make my beer taste fine beer. I want to make the world's best beer. I want to make it so good that when someone drinks it, they're like, I don't want to drink anyone else's beer. That's what I want. That's what I'm pursuing.
There you go.
That's my goal.
Yeah. Heck
Yeah.
yeah.
That's my plan. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I've made some really good beers, and I'm like, I don't really unless it's like an $8 bottle or more, German or Bavarian or Belgian, kinda don't want it. Like, I won't you'd have to pay me to drink macro beers at this day, like Bud Light, Coors Light, like, you would probably in the order of $10 to $20 a can. To drink that, that's what you'd have to pay me. That would be my number. And, but yeah, like even a lot of the local craft, as much as I like supporting local craft, like their stuff isn't as good as like what I make, to me
Fair
anyway.
enough.
And
No.
so I'm like, I'll buy this and drink one, when I go to your restaurant or whatever, because I
Yeah.
want to support you, and it's good enough for sure. But like, I'm not gonna buy a 6 pack and bring it home.
You're
Like,
right.
I'd rather just hit my own keezer. So, but yeah, so if you're just kind of like, "Oh, I just want to make some beer and have some fun," cool, use your tap. If you're like, "Oh, I want to try and make good beer that I really like and I want to put some effort into it," yeah, buy distilled or buy RO. If you're like, "I'm going to do this all the time and I want to do it kind of money efficient," buy an RO system for sure. And if you want to be super nerd like me, buy the RODI system. And the cost difference isn't that much. I mean, honestly, of all the hobbies you mentioned at the start of this chat, Homebrewing is the cheapest, dirt cheap compared to this stuff. Have you ever looked at the price of a telescope? It
No.
is super expensive. Telescopes are stupid expensive, especially scientific grade cameras and all those things. So yeah, so that's kind of, it kind of just depends on how much money do you have, how much
Right.
do you value that money,
Mhm.
and like what are you trying to make? You just trying to make something that's drinkable, or are you trying to make like the best possible thing?
Mhm.
Then you buy the water that matches.
That's a really good point.
What I feel bad about is when people say, "Oh, you got to do X, Y, and Z," and it's like the dude just wants to learn how to drive a car. Like he doesn't need a Lamborghini. Like just
100%.
you know,
Yes. Yes. This hobby can
yeah.
be as easy as you want. It can be as difficult as you want.
Right, yeah,
Right.
which is
So,
what makes it great. I
yeah.
I like that. It can fit for everyone.
Mhm.
People that are time constrained,
Yeah.
people that are not, people that are super nerdy and wanna learn all the details, and people that just wanna follow a recipe and make something they can drink, like the pinter style. There's plenty of opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, so I started out the same way you did, just kind of go back just a little bit. So my cousin turned me on to home brewing and reached out to him. He bought the Northern Brewer kit. So I bought the Amber Party Block, which is just a basic amber ale. I thought it was good beer. So it was liquid malt extract with a little bit of like mash to kind of throw it in to give like a or spice pack, whatever you want to call it, to give it a little
Yeah,
more
yeah.
flavor, body, and all that kind of stuff. And it turned out good. I enjoyed it. I thought I was, hey, I made beer, but after watching hundreds of hours of YouTube videos, reading the John Palmer book, and all that kind of stuff, like going,
Yeah,
I'm doing
yeah.
brewing a bag. I know how to make tea.
Mhm,
All I'm doing is steeping. That's super simple for me.
mhm.
I think I brought this up in other podcasts, so I apologize for those who say, Jeremy, just shut up. But when I hobby, I jump all in. I'll both feet. I'll throw all the money I have at it. This is the only hobby where I'm dragging my feet because you can spend $120 and get a kit going, or you can spend $10,000 and get a macro brewery or whatever microbrewery in your garage or nano brewery rather.
Yep.
Sorry, and I don't want
Yeah, yeah.
that. Right? I don't want. I want
Right,
somewhere not quite in the middle, but I want to slowly build my stuff up. So like,
unfortunately, I've chose marriage, so I can't do
you do know.
that.
Yeah, my wife would. I think my
Right.
wife would leave me if I had a nano brewery in my
Yeah,
garage. But
yeah.
yeah, anyways, so
I already have 4 freezers out there. She's like, "Why do you have so many fridges?" I'm like, "One's for conditioning, one's for fermenting,
oh,
one's a keezer, one's for food,
yeah,
one's the
definitely
beer
would
fridge."
like another one. I'd like to get like a 7 quart to build turn into a
Yeah, that's what I
keezer,
got, yeah,
and then turn my
yeah.
5 quart
Oh, no, it's a 5?
into
Yeah.
a fermentation chamber.
Yeah,
Because right
yeah.
now my cooling side it's getting better. It's a little janky. I don't have like a glycol system or anything like that. But I take my keezer, which is at 36 degrees, I want to say. I have a really
Mhm,
skinny trash can that's about like 5 gallons. So I fill up about 3.5, 4 gallons of water. I'll let this overnight till it gets about 40 some odd degrees. I have a little pond pump, just a little tiny little thing that
mhm.
pumps water out to a coil that goes into the
Just to
fermenter. And,
recirculate.
yep, and
Yeah.
keeps it cool. Then I have a
Yeah,
heating
right,
wrap
yep.
around as well too to counterbalance it. Of course, the ink birds are what are those? Are they 1 degree off or 3 degrees off? I think you can still be one
Um,
degree off, I
m
believe.
yeah, mine are 1. I don't know if there's other models that
Well,
are
I think
more,
yeah, I think
but
you can actually change what difference that you
the
want.
yes,
So I set
yes.
mine to 1, but again, like you said
Yep.
before, like I don't know how accurate the probe is, blah blah blah, any of that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
So you just have
mhm.
to trust the equipment that I have, and
There's a temperature equilibration gap, temp
yeah,
time,
exactly
and
right. Because like even the wrap
mhm,
I have doesn't go all the way around my fermenting bucket, right? So it
mhm,
only goes like 3 quarters, so only 3 quarters of it gets warm, or the other 1 quarter doesn't. Blah blah
mhm.
blah blah.
Yep.
You can do analysis paralysis all day, but I think I would probably quit the hobby if I did that.
Mhm.
My myself, I think that'd be going too far because,
Yeah, that's the point where it
yeah,
stops becoming fun and becomes neurotic.
yes, right, yeah. So
Yeah, that's the
I'm a
line, at
programmer
least for
by
me.
trade, so like I
Oh,
work
excellent.
really,
Technical hobbies,
yeah.
yep.
So I try really hard to be lazy, right? Because like programmers, I just talked to a gentleman last Wednesday, and he's a programmer as well too, and he understood exactly what I was talking about. Like you work really hard to solve this problem because you don't want to touch that problem again. You want to work on
Right, you
something
want it to be
else.
solved
Yes,
forever.
yes. Of
Yes,
course, it never is
absolutely.
because it's programming and
Right,
nothing's solved forever.
right,
But in the moment,
right,
it's done. So,
right.
so like
Yeah.
I'm dragging my feet. I'm trying not to spend a whole lot of money. I mean, I bought used equipment. I have no problem with it. I know some people are turned off by like it doesn't bother me. I won't buy like used buckets, just because of like
Yeah.
the
Cleanliness,
yeah,
scratches,
the
and
scratches
yeah.
are the biggest thing. They kind of
Yeah.
freaks me out. Or if they used I'm drawing a blank right now on it, like a sour yeast, right? And then
Yeah.
everything's
Lacto.
sour, and I don't want to deal with that
Yeah.
either. So then you have to use
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the acid right now, but sometimes that doesn't even work. I've read, like even in glass
Yeah.
carboys.
The peroxy acids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just can't kill off that yeast, and then now myself's infected. I don't want to deal with that kind of crap. So,
Yep.
anyways,
Right.
so I am
Exactly.
kind of curious about this part. So you're a rugby player. We can only see you from like shoulders up, but you're definitely a
Oh
wide
yeah.
guy for right.
Yeah. I'm 250 pounds. I'm not small.
There you go. So how'd you go? I'm kind of curious. How did you get into rugby that led you into analytical chemistry? So how did that route go in
Let's
your life?
see. So when I was in college, so I was always like a science enthusiast all the way
Okay.
through high school, and then in college, my undergraduate degree is in chemistry and biochemistry, and I was just walking through like the student center one day.
Yeah.
Actually, I was in high school as a chess team captain, so played a lot of chess in high
Okay.
school and college. One of the rugby players approached me, was like, "Yeah, you're a big guy. You want to play rugby?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And he's like, "Well, come out." So they just taught me how to play, and I liked it because I like physical sports.
Hmm.
And uh, when you play rugby, you drink a lot of beer,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what started my beer drinking journey. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I started drinking Coors Light when I was 20 years old, and I
Yeah.
thought it was great. I was 20, didn't know anything. It's
Hmm.
fine.
Nope. Perfect.
And so yeah, so I played for, let's see, 4 years in college,
Oh wow.
and then I moved back to Chicago. I worked for a couple of years as an analytical chemist, and then I played for 2 years while I was in Chicago for the Chicago Southside Irish. Then I moved out to Arizona to go to grad school at ASU, and then I played with I was kind of men's league at that point because I was older. I was, 26, 27, and so in grad school, I started playing with the Tempe Old Devils, and then I played with them until I was like early 30s.
Oh, wow.
And I had a kid, and when you're in your 30s playing rugby against 25, 28 year olds, like, dude, it starts to you could feel it,
Yeah, I bet.
what used to heal in a day and now it heals in 3 days or 4 days, or
Hmm.
you have this nagging hamstring that takes 8 months to heal instead of 2 months. And just the injuries, they're always there, but you just your healing period gets longer and longer and longer. So eventually I was like, you know what, I got to give this up. Plus then I started having kids and I got married. So there's very few 35 plus year olds playing men's league
Oh,
rugby
I
as D2,
yeah.
that's just at the competitive level. So, and like me, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it right. Like, you can't,
Hmm.
especially rugby, you can't go in and half-ass it. Like, it's a tackle sport. Like, you
Yeah.
get your ass handed to you. If you go in half-assing tackles, you're just going to
Hmm.
get blown up, and that also means you're going to get injured, right? You're
Yeah.
going to
Oh,
blow
wow.
out an ACL or something. So it's I had a couple surgeries. Like, I dislocated my ankle, broke
Mm.
my tibia and fibia. I have a plate in my foot. I broke my nose. I broke my collarbone. I had a torn labrum. I had to have surgery on. So lots of the typical stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, as for rugby players, it just is what it is. If you look at like the pros, for example, the guys that played 20 years, or from U15 all the way up till 30, 35 years old, like, there's 0% chance they don't end up with some sort of shoulder injury or surgery somewhere in that lifespan. It's like kind of professional hockey players. They retire and then they get 4 surgeries, both hips and both the shoulders. So, so yeah, so I did that just because I like physical sports, I like, outside, and then you just drink a ton of beer. And when you're in shape, you're 27 years old running
Yeah.
6-minute miles at 200 pounds. It's just like I'll slam a 12 pack and not even notice it. So
Hmm.
that was nice. And then
Yeah.
of course one of the guys on the team owned the bar that we had our parties at. So
There you go.
that helped a lot too.
So now you're 43. I'm going to ask this question because I was your age 6 years ago.
Yeah,
Do you find yourself like calculating risk over reward by doing things like you're like, okay, I can
absolutely.
jump off this 3 foot, rock,
Hmm.
but should I jump off
Hmm.
this rock?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I just turned 44 like a month
Okay,
ago.
happy birthday.
They do. So, but like I was helping my cousin today, who's also about to be 44, put up a pergola,
Okay,
and we're
yeah.
climbing up ladders and leaning over and putting in the
Uh-huh.
bolts and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, dude, I'm too old to be climbing these ladders, man. I'm looking down like that looks pretty far. I'm like the second rung. I'm like, I don't know if I fall, I'm gonna hit my head and break my arm, and
Right?
just yeah, it's
It's just
so different when you're older.
that is,
Yeah.
yeah, things you got to worry
I
about
I'm
and think.
scared, like, if by the time I'm 70 or 80, like, am I not gonna wanna leave the house because I might trip? Like, I hope not, like, it sucks, like, you feel it too, because like, I like to run on South Mountain, like, trail running, and, You can Google South Mountain, like Pima Trail at
Okay.
PIMA, and, like, it's a good trail, like, it's not super rugged or anything, but when I'm there, like, my number one thought when I'm, like, hopping around between the rocks is, like, if I step wrong and I twist an ankle,
Mm,
I gotta, like, bandage it up, and I gotta hobble my ass another mile that way to civilization because,
yeah, fair enough.
ain't no
Yeah.
one helped me. That's one of the reasons I got this Garmin. It's got, like, the emergency thing, so if you
Oh,
fall
okay.
and you get
Yeah.
passed out,
Yeah.
it'll automatically call 911 and text your emergency contact and stuff.
Oh, that's actually a good
So
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another reason. So, like, when I was saying when I'm hunting, I was elk hunting up in Payson, which is
Hmm.
5,000 feet elevation in the mountains
Oh, wow.
of Arizona, and there's no cell service in some of those canyons. So, this tells you GPS, it tells you where you are, but ain't no signal getting out. So I'm like, if I go down in this canyon and it's all muddy and I can't get back up, well, I'm either sleeping here or I'm going to be hiking for 7 miles that way to
Just
get
try to get
around the
back up.
canyon.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I think satellite phone might be in my future for those types of trips, just in case.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So around here where I'm at, so like I said, I'm in Northeast Tennessee. We have the Appalachian Trail runs through here. So we get a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
hikers starting from Georgia going all the way up to was it
Yep,
Maine or
yeah, the
Maine back
whole the
down.
whole trail.
So
It's
that's pretty
crazy.
neat.
Those guys are nuts.
Well, they are. The one who
I know someone who did the Pacific Trail, like, "Whew, man,
there's somebody recently, I think the last 3 years, like she ran the whole trail. Like she broke some type of record. I forgot what the record is. You can probably Google it, but she ran the
good
whole
for you,
thing. I'm like,
man, but wow."
holy crap. That's just
Yeah, that's
insane.
nuts.
I've walked parts of it. I mean, I've probably done a couple miles
Yeah,
here and there. So like
sure.
around here is pretty well maintained for the most part. But I heard once you get further north, it's super rocky and really hard to get around. So you got to be very careful. And a lot of states have if you have to use the restroom, you have to take it out with you.
Right.
So there is
Yeah,
no burying on the side of the
that's not
trail and all
fun.
that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So
no,
so things you have to
that's
prepare
not me.
for. And
Yeah, I'll just go to the places that have a toilet.
right, exactly. Okay, and so we're just a tad bit off topic, but it's still fun though. I'm enjoying this
Yeah, yeah.
conversation so far. It's great. I
Cool,
don't want
yeah.
to talk about your almost yeast house that you almost started. I think you said somewhere
Oh,
like you were
yeah.
unemployed at one moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at a place and the company went under, so they laid everyone off. And I was unemployed for a couple months. And I was like, I like brewing, but I wouldn't want to own a brewery, because like running a business, whenever you do something for money that used to be something you did for fun, it's not fun anymore. Right. And especially if it's money that if I don't get this money for money, my family doesn't eat. Like it's not just play money at that point, it's for real. And so one of the things I was thinking about doing was starting up like a yeast company. Yeast biochemistry is really interesting. So there's only a few companies, in my opinion, that are actually doing real yeast science. I think it's like Omega Labs or Meal. I forget the name. Starts with an O. And then White Labs
White Labs, yep.
with
Mhm.
Chris White. I emailed him, tried to talk to him a few times because I think first of all, there's no regulation for the most part. Like I come from FDA regulated environments,
Okay.
like so I understand pharma regs, food regs, dietary supplement regs, cannabis regs, all the things that the FDA is supposed to regulate, right? I understand how it works, and I would argue that from a yeast standpoint for beer and to a lesser extent for bread, there's basically no regulation, right? There is food regulation, so people are going to nitpick in the comments, I'm sure, but realistically, there's no regulation. Like I run a CLIA lab right now, right? Like a clinical lab
Okay.
for diagnosing diseases for patients. We have regulations. We have an audit like every month for
Wow.
some regulatory agency. It's a huge pain in the butt. That is regulated. When you're like, "Oh, you can't make this tomato sauce because your pH is above 4.5," like, that's your regulation? One thing you can't do? Like, there's no real regulation. And so, the door is wide open with CRISPR technology, and I'm sure Chris White is all over this, to see, like, what genes can we take from which bacteria and yeast and jam it into a yeast or bacteria and get these cross strains that we could then sell that are unique to our company.
Right.
They can do really fancy things like DNA barcoding so that basically if people copy it, they
Oh,
can know
okay.
who it is. Like
Oh,
DuPont does
interesting.
some
Yeah,
clever
yeah,
stuff with
yeah.
that with the chemistry side, like chemical fingerprinting. But so they know like you can do these really advanced chemistry things with yeast, and especially in 2026 America, under the way things are currently going with our FDA, they're not going to stop you. So like you could do gene editing and like all kinds of genetically modified organism stuff, and there's not really any labeling requirements
Interesting.
for
Yeah.
modifying yeast and then selling the yeast and letting people use that yeast to make a different product that
Mhm.
they don't sell commercially, right? Because you're not selling something for consumption because people aren't like, oh, this yeast is the best, right? They're pouring it in and they're using the yeast as a, like, basically as an ingredient
Mhm.
to make something else. And so there's just basically no regulations on these companies doing cool CRISPR technology to really mix and match whatever they want. And there's already people doing this, but it's not a lot, at least in
Okay.
my mind.
Yeah.
Like there's one or two companies, maybe three, one or two I'm not aware of. But like considering how neat and powerful this technology is, I think there's a lot of room for technological and scientific innovation there. And I mean, setting up a lab to do this in an un slash low regulated environment is pretty easy. You can buy a strip mall spot, you can get some commercial space
Mhm.
for, $1,000 a square foot or whatever it is, or for 100 square feet. And you could put a lab and you could put a couple instruments in, especially biology labs. They don't require high, you don't need a triple quad MSMS to do this stuff. You don't need a $500,000 piece of equipment. You need like, a biohazard hood and an incubator and um, what do they call it? An autoclave,
Mhm.
and some pipettes. $10,000 and you're in good shape, and maybe I'm exaggerating, but, you could buy some used stuff on LabX, right? Like, you could set up a lab pretty easily. You could do it in your garage. I mean, people already do, right? If you're familiar with the mushroom community, people that do
Yeah,
mycelium
yeah, yeah, yeah.
mushroom growths and
Mhm.
stuff, like, they do that stuff in their garage, and they just have, like, a little fume hood that they build themselves, got, like, a little HEPA filter in it, and they're, like, pipetting their little myceliums into little petri dishes. Basically what it is, just at a, like, slightly more organized scientific scale. So yeah, I thought about for a while setting up a company that doing that. And in trying to do that, I went to a lot of the local craft brew places. I said, "Where do you get your yeast from? Would you use other yeast? What kind of yeast do you like?" And that's what kind of killed it. Is when I was doing that, a lot of them didn't seem to have interest in interesting yeast. And I don't know if
Mm.
maybe I wasn't talking to the right people, or maybe the brewers that the head brewers that I did speak to were just like, "Oh, we just buy whatever's most commercially financially available." And it's like, well, you're not really recipe optimizing at that point. You're
Yeah.
kind of just getting by with what you can. And maybe they don't realize, the yeast chemistry or the yeast biochemistry and how much it impacts their final product. They might just be like, oh, just throw yeast in there. Like, they have the house strain, for example. Here's a simple one. This is one of the ideas I had. If you set up a yeast company or even like a satellite to White Labs, for example, White Labs desert version, set it out here in the desert and you can offer as a service the ability to take yeast from each harvest or each pitch that the microbrews and macrobrews. So we have Four Peaks Brewery, it's a big one out here. I think they're owned by InBev now.
Okay.
But you can offer as a service that they'll give you, I don't know, 5 mil or 10 mil aliquot of their yeast solution that they use, and you could do yeast health studies on it, to
Right.
see, how many generations deep is it? How much genetic drift are you seeing? When can you expect this yeast to not behave anymore, to not do what you want it
Mm.
to do? And if you can get 2 or 3 more generations out of it, so if you can go from 5 to 8 or 5 to 10, you've just dropped your yeast costs by 50%. So whatever proportion of your margin is based on your yeast costs, that subsection went down by 50% merely because you have better monitoring of something you do. And that service is cheap because you could pay someone 40, 50K a year to do this testing in a lab that costs 100K to set up.
Right.
You do it forever.
Yeah.
And then you could do it for everyone. Anyone could send samples in the mail. It's not illegal. There's no dot requirements for sending yeast in the mail. Like, I don't care, right? They care about lithium batteries, not yeast samples. And so
True.
like, you could go to any place. You can walk around Asheville and say, "Can I have a sample of your yeast?" And if they trusted you and they knew you weren't trying to, like, be a lawyer and do lawyer stuff with it, they'd be like, "Yeah, if you're gonna do science and give me a report, absolutely." Like, I do that stuff all the time when I had a lab. Like, I went to the local fish store and I said, "Can I have a sample of your water? I need to measure the background amino acid levels. Can I just have some water?" And they're like, "Here you go, bud." I'm like, "Thanks, bye." I'm serious. Like
There you
they
go.
like people want to know cool stuff, and if it's not expensive, it doesn't cost them anything, and there's no risk. They don't have any liability. I think that would be a really cool idea. If I was a millionaire and if if I didn't have to turn that hobby or interest into a successful business in order for my family to
Yeah.
thrive, I absolutely would have done that. Right? If I could just say, "Oh, I got 2 million in the bank. I'm just going to spend 200K, set up this business. If it dies, it dies. Whatever. My kids are still going to have their college and be able to, eat dinner." If that were the case, I would absolutely do it because I think it's a very novel thing. Once you start doing this, you start pushing the envelope. Other companies, the Omega Labs and the Chris Whites are gonna be like, "Oh, those guys are doing that. We should probably make sure that they're not edging us out in the market."
Right. Heck, if you're playing this little the fifth a fantasy in your head, like, you could even get to be bought out by like, well, the White Lab's like, here, you buy
Sure.
my lab, I'm done.
Yeah.
There you go. Because it works for me.
Yeah, right, like, my goal here is not really to, like, try and create a successful company, it's to advance the science
Yeah.
in a, financially rewarding way, and, like, what I found is if I was gonna open a company, I would open it as a co-op. So, as I bring chemists and biochemists and biologists and microbiologists in to run the lab, I say, "Okay, you guys all get ownership stake in this," that grows as a function of as the company grows.
Right.
Like, I personally think that's the right way to run the business, but also, if you give a scientist a chance to, have some skin in the game with their company,
Right.
they're getting a lot better science than if you're just paying them
Yeah.
cash. At the
Right.
end of the
Yeah.
day, they're
Yeah.
like, "Peace out,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
does a job."
Yeah.
So, that's just capitalism at work, but,
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
I mean, let's be real. But, like, that would've been a really cool thing to do, and I was, kinda doing the background research for it. I wrote up a business case. My biggest problem is I don't have enough rich people friends that
Yeah.
I can't be like, "Yo, I got this cool idea, wanna fund me?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm rich, here you go." Like, that's my problem. I'm from a blue collar background. My dad's an electrician, so,
Yeah. My
I
dad.
I don't have those contacts.
My dad worked for GM. So I mean, like I say, I grew up in Michigan, so like we're right next to you, right? So
Mhm,
like a 4 hour drive
mhm.
from Flint to Chicago. That's how far it was. So
Yep.
yeah, so I grew up that way. Then I got married, had kids, moved down to Tennessee, went back to college. I was actually started off as a pre-pharmacist. So then I would have been the first graduating class, or well, yeah, to get into pharmacy school. There's three things to get into pharmacy school. You had to score high on the PCAT. Of course, I had like a stellar GPA because I would have been the first student to get into for pharmacy school, and then have to pass the interview. If one of those three things I didn't get, if I didn't pass one of those three, I was stuck.
Mhm,
I do it to next year. I was like, well, what do I do? I said, well, I guess I could take the MCAT, right? So I was like, okay, what
mhm.
kind of doctor do
Mm,
I want to be? I was like, well, the only
yeah,
conductor I want to be would probably be like a pediatrician because I like kids, but then I have to deal with adults. I don't
yeah.
want to deal with adults. So the wife was like, well,
Those are the
why don't you go
worst.
take a couple computer science courses? 'Cause I did a lot of PC repair when I was younger as a kid. I was a nerd
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah,
I'd pick up computers off the out trash for the most part. I'd fix them and resell them.
yeah. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I was more on the hardware
Mhm,
side. So like I went to college and started studying like networking and system administration, and then of course the market when I graduated dried up my area. Like all the IT stuff went overseas. I was like, I don't know what to do, so I became a programmer because I had like a couple of programming classes. Like I think I could do this for a living. So here I am,
mhm.
almost 20 years later.
Now I'm on ChatGPT every day.
Oh yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, actually, we're
Yeah,
encouraged to use some AI in our and it. I don't want to get off too far off the topic, but it I want to say he does 80% of the code right. Is the other 20% I got to fix. That probably takes
yeah,
80% of my time, right? So I got to sit there like,
yeah,
this is
right.
not exactly how we would do it. So I have to go back, rewrite it to match. You can definitely tell. And I'm sure like you've read reports
Like
where like,
style.
yeah, yes, yeah. So like if somebody wrote like a report, like, the first few paragraphs are like, going, okay, I understand. Then all of a sudden there's this weird third paragraph, like, okay, someone else wrote
Mhm.
this, like this doesn't have the flow like everything else did. Like something's off
Yeah,
here.
right.
So, and I hate
Yeah,
that. I want my stuff to look exactly how other
consistent,
things
yeah.
kind of flows. So speaking of
Right.
flow, let's kind of get into the pool water disaster.
Oh, yeah,
So how
jeez.
did this happen?
Okay, okay, so, first of all, so I have the claw hammer system. Um, I use the 40 plate chiller to cool the wort, but I live in a desert. I just kind of find it irresponsible to just run cold water down the drain for the purpose of cooling wort. It's just such a waste of water. So one day I had the bright idea to use my pool as the heat sink ultimately.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
'Cause in the winter time, so roughly between I would say October and March, the pool is on average 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, yeah.
And then on the outskirts of that, it's probably, slowly creeping up, and then by July, it's 95. So so for the most part, my pool is a really good heat sink. So what I have is it's actually set up right over there. What I have is, an old fish tank pump that I used to use, 2,000 gallons per minute flow rate, and it just pumps through the the plate chiller and then the pool water goes back into the pool. So cold, 50, 55 Fahrenheit water comes out of the pool, goes through the chiller, and then goes back into the pool. The hot wort goes from, the boil pot, and then through the chiller, and then through the pump, obviously, and then back into the boil pot. No problem. I do this all the time. I've been doing this, I don't know how many batches now. 50 batches I've done this, whatever. It's never an issue. It's
Right,
fine.
right.
Well, one day I was like, okay, I had a slightly lower yield. I think I had like 4.5 gallons maybe, or
Okay.
4.2 gallons or
Okay.
something. And I'm like, I really want to try and, be greedy, get all this extra, all the line losses, right, between all the tubing. I'm like, well, I got to make sure I do that. So I use a Anvil bucket fermenter, stainless
Mhm.
steel, and I set it on the ground next to my boil pot. And then when the wort is, actually, this is great. The 5 gallons of roughly 210 Fahrenheit wort, because that's the boiling temperature here in Phoenix, because we're at 1,200 feet, will drop down to about 70 degrees with 50, 55-degree Fahrenheit pool water in 9 minutes.
My. Yeah. That's
9 minutes. It is
phenomenal. Yeah.
insanely efficient. My head blew up the first time I measured this. I was like, this cannot be right. It is so efficient. 200 degrees, 5 gallons of liquid, 200 degrees to 70 degrees in 9 minutes. So so after it's about pitching temperature or just within a couple degrees or whatever, I take the tubing, instead of feeding it back into the boil, I just start putting it in the fermenter. If it's roughly 1050 or below, I don't oxygenate, so I just kind of splash it
Right,
around,
yeah.
let it arc through the air, try and oxygenate as it's whatever. And so the open bucket fermenter was on the ground next to the boil pot, and I filled it up, and it was all done. But I have a bunch of line losses, and I never measured my line losses. I try to like lift up the tubes so it
Mhm.
drains all the way out, And I was like, well, I really want to try and get this last like half gallon out. It's probably not a half gallon, but I just whatever. So I disconnect the I disconnect the plate chiller from the pool, and I pick up the plate chiller, and the tubes for the wort drain out into the barrel and into the
Mhm.
fermenter. But but if you notice, it goes, like, up and then down, right? So all the liquid on this part drained out just fine, but there's, like, a little bit of liquid on this part that couldn't make it over the hump. So I'm like, "Well, no problem, I'll just turn it," right? Well, when I turned it, the entire plate chiller's volume of water, of pool water,
Yeah.
went directly into the middle of the open fermenter. And
Oh.
I was like, I just shout, luckily no one's around, so I just shouted, and I just stood there for, like, 1 minute staring at it like, "I cannot believe I just did that." I wasted the entire brew day.
Oh
I
my
forget what beer
gosh.
it was when I made it. It wasn't a super expensive one, so it wasn't like a triple or anything. I think it might have just been a Hefeweizen or something that's a little bit cheaper to make, but the whole brew day was obviously trash, and as soon as I did it, it started making the liquid pouring sound. I'm like, and I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "Well, what's in the pool water?" Like, "There's chlorine. Is it is it sterile? Is there any way I could save this? Could I boil it again?" And I'm, like, running through these permutations in my head of how I could save this
Right?
batch, and I'm just like, "There's no way I could save this batch." Pumped it right out, right then
Oh,
and there.
man.
I was and ever since then, I just don't get greedy. I'm like, "You know what? Nothing goes above the level of the fermenter until the cap is on it, and then I'll deal with line losses." Like, I'll spill a little bit, I'm gonna eat the loss. I just don't care,
Yeah.
because that was so annoying. I was so mad at myself. I'm pretty methodical, like, as an analytical chemist, you're very methodical, and my background is biochemistry, so there's like very methodical ways. Like, if you're familiar with the concept of aseptic technique, it's like the idea of don't touch a thing unless you need to touch it, and once you touch it, only touch it with one
Oh,
hand or the
gotcha.
other. If you touch other things,
Yeah.
remove your gloves. Like, remove your gloves by taking under the thing, folding it over, and pulling them off, so that only these two fingers have touched the inside of the glove, and the gloved hand then gets inserted inside out. There's like all kinds of like little stuff like that that you'll do if you're in a micro lab or a biochem lab or whatever. And so I'm very usually pretty good about the stuff. But when I picked it up, I'm like, I'll just dump it over, and just like bam. So yeah, that was, I think, probably
Oh,
my worst. Like, that was, I think, the worst time. Like, I personally just made a dumb mistake and had to dump it. Uh, but the pool chilling system works
that
fantastic.
sounds awesome. Yeah, I've
Yeah, it saves all the water. Obviously, I lose no water at all. We don't swim in the pool, obviously, between October and March anyway, it's too cold.
right.
So it's like it does not do anything. And then they have 9 minutes, like, the wort gets cooled. And even so in the summertime, the pool's like 100. You know, in the heat of summer, pool will get to 100, but for most of the summer, it's probably in the low 90s, I would say. And so even then, it'll bring my wort down from 209 to 120
Okay.
or
Yeah.
110 or 100 in, you know, like 20 minutes. You know, or it'll drop to like 90 after like 30 minutes, which I'm a fan of rapid cooling. I have done the no chill and I think no chill is fine. I personally just don't like the no chill because I want to get my brew day done. I got stuff going on. Like I can't be coming back all the time. Like, is it the temperature? Can I pitch yet?
Right.
Like I don't want to do that. I've in the past when I've tried no chill, I'm like, okay, well, I usually brew in the mornings like 7, 8 a.m. till about noon
Okay.
and get it all
Yeah. Yeah.
done. So I have the afternoon to whatever. And it's always almost always on weekends because that's all I got. And so I'm like, "Okay, well, it's, you know, it's 12 o'clock. I'll put I'll put the bucket." I just have a full-size refrigerator. I just put the whole bucket in it. It's a dedicated refrigerator controlled by an Inkbird for the fermentation, controller. And so I'll just put the whole thing in there, and I'll just come back at, like, 8 PM. It'll cool down the last 10 or 20 degrees by then, and then I'll just pitch the yeast. But sure enough, like, I'll wake up Monday morning, and I'm like, "I never pitched," you know? And I'm like, you know? So it's like, yeah, I don't want to have to worry about that. In the back of my mind, I'm kinda like got that nagging feeling like I'm forgetting to
There
do
was some. Yep.
something. Yeah, so I hate that. So I'm just like, I just need to get it all done as
Yep.
soon as possible. So if I can get 100% down, if I can get to 100% of pitch temperature from boil
Right.
temperature, especially in 9, 10, 15 minutes, I'm doing that.
That's
I only do
fast.
no
Like.
chill when I have, like, stuff going on, yeah. And that's with the 60 plate chiller. I wanna get the that's with the 40 plate chiller. I wanna get the 60 or the 90 plate chiller, the
Mhm.
thicker
Mhm.
one that they have. I just wonder what the metrics would be. So eventually this one will die because there is chlorine in the pool water. And so people are listening. I've had this conversation on Reddit. They're like, oh, the chlorine's gonna eat your stainless steel. And I'm like, one, I rinse it when I'm done right away. Two, it's mostly cool temperatures. Like it's not 180 degrees Fahrenheit chlorine water. It's 200 degrees wort, but it's 55 degrees water. And, you know, the water is sucking out, and it's a 2,000 gallon per minute flow rate. So it's very fast. And so I don't think there's enough time for hot chlorine to react with the metal. And I haven't seen any pitting or flaking or discoloration yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but even so, even if I do and the metal starts to go away, A, that's on the cold side, that's on the pool side, so I don't give a shit. But B, even if it eats through and eventually eats a hole in it, I just get a new plate chiller.
Yeah.
They're like what, 40 bucks, 80 bucks? Like, who
Something like
cares?
that.
Just get a new
Yeah.
one. If it lasts me for 4 or 5 years and I don't have to think of this problem, that's not a problem. I just buy a new one.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You got your money's worth and then some.
Right, exactly, right. So otherwise I gotta do all these games, or I gotta waste a ton of water, which I feel like is irresponsible actor.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Especially
so
out
no,
there.
the
I get
pool
that, man.
chilling
Yeah.
system is pretty unique. I don't know if anyone else does it.
Well, that is
But I
awesome.
caught a little flack on Reddit before, but yeah,
Let's
I have
run
a
it.
few
There's
pictures
always
I could
flack
probably
on
send
this.
you, but
You should. Yeah.
yeah, it's the internet.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't take it seriously.
no.
Like, yeah, you do you, guys. This is what works for me.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, I use just a word chiller for the most part. I think depends on how
Yeah.
I do it. So actually, it depends on the beer though too. So I actually have a paddle that attaches to a drill that I use that for when I make meat. So I can mix up the meat really fast. But I also
Mhm,
use that for that to cool down my wort really quickly as too. So you just make this huge
mhm.
whirlpool basically, you spin it around pretty fast.
Yeah,
But
yep.
also oxygenate at the same time. It's not the oxygenate afterwards,
Right.
right? So
Yes,
I do it
yes,
right
yep.
then. But sometimes I wonder if I'm over oxygenating it because all of a sudden now the wort gets all foamy and all this other kind of stuff goes
Uh-huh.
on.
Yeah.
Right? Am I going a little too aggressive? But my beer turns out I think I'm a all right home brewer. I've been doing this for about 5 years, but I don't brew as often as most people do. Like this year is probably the
Yeah.
most I'm going to do, and it's almost a beer a month. I've never done that before.
Okay.
I'd probably
Yeah, that's good
do
pace.
maybe 4 or 5 beers a year. So so this year's like
Yeah.
it's pretty big overall, but um, it'll be to be braggadocious. But I did win I won this trophy here for the homebrew club that I'm in. Right, so
Nice,
I won
cool.
that. So, I mean, obviously, I'm doing
Good.
something right, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I want is I mean, I can live 1,000 years. I'll still never brew all the beers I want to make, obviously. But there's definitely beers I want to try to get to. Like, I get a Belgian double I want to make. I want to make a Dunkel.
Mm,
I'm gonna do a
love
I'm gonna
those.
do a barley wine with a buddy of mine because he actually has a
Yes.
So it's going to be
Place of
barrel
ignition.
aged barley wine, so it's gonna be even
Yes. Oh,
heavier. So
wow.
I'm thinking
Jesus. English barley wine or
I think
American?
maybe English. So probably, I'm
Yeah,
thinking for me
me
between
too.
13 to 15% somewhere around there. Because I'm not sure how wet his
Yeah.
barrel is either. because the wetter the barrel
True.
is, the more liquor, blah blah blah. So that's going to
Yeah.
throw things off as well too. I don't have the equipment to measure that high of alcohol, so we may have to borrow somebody's to see what it actually turns out at the end of the day. But that should be pretty cool. What else do I have on my list up there? Oh yeah, I got some meads and some ciders I want to do. So I want to do a strawberry mango cider. That just sounds like a really good summer kind of cider to have. Um, but yeah, so I made a cloche. That's what I had earlier. I did mess that up. I guess I could tell the story because I haven't told anybody yet. I used the Cellar Science German strand, right? So for some reason, I thought it was an ale strand. So when I
Hmm.
got my cold side set up and everything like that, I set it to 62 degrees. It's supposed to be between 55 and 59. So I think the flavors I'm
Mm,
getting, because it's not a bad beer,
yeah.
it's a good beer. It's not a
Okay.
close, right?
You're
There's
close enough,
not
but
even,
not
yeah,
as
it's
what
not
you
even a
wanted.
close. It's really sweet, bready. And I reread my recipe. Like my recipe is fine. It's mainly Pilsner and a little bit like 15 crystal malt. I'm using Pearl and South hops.
Pretty simple, yeah.
Yeah, just a really
Okay.
simple collection. Nothing fancy about it whatsoever. But I used a
Yeah.
lager yeast, but I treated it like an
Mm.
ale yeast when I thought so. I did mess up.
Yeah,
It was
that
it
could
was
do
my
it.
part. I messed up.
Yeah, it happens. Yep.
But it was one of those things like I was telling my buddy the other night, like so more beer like up there shipping from like 59 to 79. I think I was like at $60. I'm like, well, I got to get this free shipping. I just feel like I have to. So for like another $20, I bought
They
$20
gotcha,
of
yeah.
yeast.
Spend $20 more to get free shipping,
Yep.
that would have cost you $10.
I think it was like
You're probably
$14. But yeah, anyways, yeah, so I
yeah,
bought all
that's
the
rad.
cellular science because that's kind of what they're pushing. And I wanted to try it out anyways. I've never tried
Sure.
it. So I usually
Yeah,
use
yeah.
like fermentus for the most part. I use some liquid yeast once in a while, but getting liquid yeast shipped here always comes in warm, even if I pay the extra $4 to $6 for the
Right.
ice packs. And the bags are always
Yeah.
swollen. And I'm like, oh
Yep.
man, is this still
Uh,
viable? So knock
if
on
so, how
wood, I've been
much?
happy with it.
Yeah.
It's worked out fine for
Right.
me, but there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to get a yeast starter going, pitch that, let that sit for 24, 48 hours. Hopefully something
Yeah.
happens. And those are like $15 a pop, right?
Have you ever considered making your own yeast bank?
So I don't have the refrigerator space for it, but I kind of want to because I talked to
You
one.
could buy refrigerators, you know
Oh, I
this, right?
can. Yeah. I could definitely buy. I could buy used. I can do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah,
sent.
right, Facebook
Yeah.
Marketplace, yeah.
So the last one that,
Because if yeast getting liquid yeast is a problem, then
yeah,
that's,
that's
like,
definitely a
might be
solution.
a
Yeah.
valid solution.
So Ryan
Yeah.
Thompson was the guy I talked to the last interview that went up, and he has over between 30 and 40 different yeast strands. This
Mhm.
is what he does. He even reached out to Elysium and got their,
Like, he keeps them personally?
yeah, yep.
Oh,
He
nice,
harvests
yeah.
everything, but he reached out to Elysium and got their proprietary yeast. He just wrote me an email. Like, yeah, I really enjoy your beer. Is there a way I can get some of yours? Like, yeah. And they overnighted it to him.
Mhm.
I was like, wow, that's
Nice.
actually really, really cool. That was a great interview, by the
Yeah.
way. If you want to listen to somebody that's really loves the yeast, collecting yeast and
Yeah,
stuff like
for
that.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about like the beer styles. I don't actually have it on here, but this is going to kind of pop as like, what kind of beer styles do you gravitate towards to make?
Oh, yeah. I love the malty styles.
Okay.
Germans, Bavarians, Belgians, 100% my jam. I make Hefeweizen probably 3 times a year.
Okay.
In the summertime, I like the Hefs. I like Belgian Wits a lot in the summertime. I have a recipe for, like, a 3.5, 4% Belgian Wit that I can
Ooh,
crush, like, a gallon
nice.
a day in the summertime
Yeah.
in the pool. Remember, it gets to 120 out here,
Yeah.
so it's
I'd
pretty
melt.
hot
I'd
sometimes.
melt.
Yeah, yeah. If you until you had a real summer out here, you don't realize how hot 120 is. Yeah. So that's kind of my summertime beers, and then once hockey season and football season rolls around, fall is usually my triples.
Okay.
I
Oh,
have a triple
wow. I
right
like
now. It's like
triples. Yeah.
10%, so I can only drink like a half a glass of it. But I love the Belgians, and then in the wintertime when it's darker and colder,
Mm-hmm.
cold 90.
Mm-hmm.
I love Dunkels. I love
Mm-hmm.
Dunkelweisens. I like weedy beers, so I like
Okay.
Weizenbachs.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Um, yep. So yeah, yeah, chocolatier beers I like. I would say those are probably the ones that I brew the most frequently. I I'm not a huge stout and porter
Okay.
fan. Although I haven't actually tried my hand at like a pastry stout. I think I would like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I've had a couple in the past that I liked, like just I don't know the brands, but I also like milk stouts, but I think I'm lactose intolerant. Like I used to be, and now I'm kind of not. So I don't know what's going on, but So I want to give my shot of that. I just recently, a friend of mine left the hobby, and so he's like, "Hey, you want my old fridge?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." I put it in the garage, just pack it in there. So now I have a conditioning
Yeah.
fridge because one of my biggest problems for like conditioning lagers or like a bar, I want to make a nice, good English barley wine, is I don't have anywhere in the house that's consistently, cellaring temperatures, lagering temperatures, 40, 50 Fahrenheit doesn't exist. I have the air on 9 months of the year. In fact, I already turned them air on, for obvious reasons this year. So my air is typically on like 72, 74 degrees. And that's the coldest the house ever gets. I don't have a basement, very few basements out here in the desert. And so there's just nowhere I can put that stuff. So if you don't have a dedicated refrigeration system, you cannot cellar a lager or beer. So now I have that. It can fit, it's like an apartment style fridge. So
Okay.
I think I could fit two corny kegs in there.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I can lager in there. So because I want to make a barley wine and lager it for like a year. And so
Okay.
I was
Wow.
planning on making that sometime this year. And then, but also when I make like the Christmas ale, I like, August or September to make a Christmas ale with vanilla beans and the nutmeg, the
Hmm.
seed, and there's this is a star anise, or there's another ingredient that's the typical
For
Christmas
brain. Yeah.
flavoring.
No,
I
that sounds
I forget
delicious.
what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made one of those, and actually the best one I ever made came from that extract kit. That first extract kit I ever
Mm-hmm.
made was like a Christmas ale, and it was really good. So I tried to replicate it. It's mostly like a brown ale with spices, like a spiced brown, but it's really good. So I wanna make that in like September and then age it
Mm.
for like nice clean 3 months.
Yeah.
Nice and slow. So it's nice to have that not the fermenting fridge, the conditioning fridge or the cellaring fridge, I'm calling it. So yeah, so
That's
the
a good idea.
Dunkels
Yeah.
are probably my I don't know, this makes me sound like an alcoholic. Like my day drinking beer, like when I come home and I'm off work, I'm like, I get my beer, I'm
Yeah.
good, right? But then like my fancy beers, like my triples and my doubles, because they're a little bit more alcohol and I don't drink them every day. It's like I'll drink those like when it's a fancy hockey game or when the Bears are playing, and I'm like, all right. Unfortunately, Bears play at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning sometimes. It's like, oh, this is my Bears beer. What do you want me to do? I gotta drink it. So yeah, my day drinker is typically a Hefeweizen in the winter and like a Dunkel in the summer, or excuse me, a Hefeweizen in the summer and a Dunkel in the winter.
So maybe you have to start drinking like coffee stouts. So like make that your bear beer. They're like, yeah, what's coffee?
Yeah, yeah, right. I could, yeah,
If you're lactose intolerant, get some pastry stuff you may want to watch out too. Because I know they use lactose in those as well too.
yeah,
So
right.
you gotta.
So
If you're gonna make one yourself, I guess you could use some other type of non-fermentable sugars, but I don't know. I guess it'd be the creaminess. That'd be one thing, but kind of interesting to try to
yeah,
achieve.
I think I would just bite the bullet and
Just
just
try it, see what happens.
suffer.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
if you're at
yeah.
home, it'd be
I
fine.
mean, I do take like those
Oh,
lactase
yeah,
pills,
yeah,
the
yeah,
enzyme. Those work pretty well for me. So I think if I worst case scenario I did that,
yeah.
I would be okay.
Yeah, I do
So,
like a good pastry stout.
um,
Do you guys get
yeah, I
Founders
haven't
out
tried
that way by
Wait a minute.
chance? Do they ship that far?
In what?
Founders? Do they ship that far out?
Every once in a while I've seen Founders on the shelf out here, but I've had
Okay,
it plenty of times from being back east, and
yeah,
yeah, that's a good
because they
brewery. I
got
like
that
them a lot.
Mackinac Island Fudge, which is like a phenomenal winter cold beer. Like,
Well, I haven't had that
granted, it
one.
doesn't get
Yeah,
cold like in Arizona per se, but yeah, but it's a good sipper. It's like 13%, I'd say. Like, it's just one of those like
yeah, big
you
boy.
just gotta
Yeah,
sit there. You gotta sip on, and it's one of those ones like when I talk about this like non-stout ish people or even barrel aged beers, like if you let that beer just warm up and just take your time with it, you're gonna see all these
yeah,
wonderful complex flavors just come out. I mean, you'll start off
yeah,
like one flavor and you'll end with something totally different, and it's just an
yeah.
amazing
I
ride.
love beers like
Yeah,
that.
just an amazing
Yeah,
ride.
yeah,
And
exactly.
also, yeah,
Yeah.
Founders I think does a pretty good job. Actually, you got I've not been. I want to go so bad. Fobab. Did you ever go to that when you lived in Chicago?
What's it called?
Fobab, a festival of barrel aged beers.
Oh no,
So
no,
it
I haven't.
happens.
I didn't really get too into brewing until after I was out here.
Ah, fair enough.
So I
And no,
wasn't.
it's in
Yeah,
November. I think it's the first week of November. First week in November. But it's all just barrel aged beer. So you're talking 10 to 20 to
oh,
20% beers, right?
yeah. The Goose Island I'll buy every once in a while. You
Oh
can
my
pick them up
gosh.
at Bevmo or Total Wine.
Yes. I only get the Goose Island. I don't buy the variants because the variants are like 16 to 20 some odd dollars a pop. And I was like, I have a hard time justifying. I want to try it. Like they have a Bananas Foster's. It just sounds phenomenal. But
Yeah.
at $22,
Yeah, it probably is.
I'm like,
Right,
ah.
yeah. Maybe someone could buy it for me for my
Or
birthday.
split it. I mean, I would split it with somebody because again, it's a big
Yeah,
beer to drink by
yeah,
myself, right? I mean, I could do it,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but
exactly. Yep.
do we not want to?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's another reason that, like, for people that are listening that should get into brewing is if you're like me and you know, "All right, this is how much I drink. That's not gonna change." And I know what beers I like. Those prices are not gonna go down, they're going
Yeah.
up. So, for me, my calculations, just back of the envelope math is like, on average, my beers aim from Paulaner at the low end of dollars, $4 for, 20-ounce can or what are they, 16-ounce cans.
Yeah.
$4 to $8, $12 a bottle, somewhere in there. Typically $7 a bottle is what I like. Like my favorite brewery is Weinstefan.
Okay.
So their
Hmm.
Hefeweizen, it's like $14 for a 6 pack. And that's like an 11-ounce bottle. And so when I do for my calculations, what I've done is it puts me at like $1 a bottle to make the equivalent beer. So I'm saving 6x, $6 a bottle by brewing it myself. I'm losing, yeah, the time, the Monday morning, and then the CapEx, even the ROI on my CapEx, like to buy all the gear and get it all up and running. Especially like you, I don't mind buying used gear if it works and it's in good shape. Fine, especially refrigerators. I don't care. I got the two all the one refrigerator of the because I have the Keyser, I have and then two fridges in the garage. One fridge was free and the other one was $20.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Nothing.
why would I not buy that? You know, you could put it on the curb and say free, it'll be gone in an hour. Cool. So yeah, so like after the CapEx, which I calculated, it's like a 2-year ROI for me because the Clawhammer system when I bought it was like
Yeah.
$1,000, a few other miscellaneous pieces. I bought the tilts because I think I might have actually got that as a birthday present.
Well,
The
yeah,
the
yeah. The
tilts because
hydrometer.
I
Yeah,
like to
yeah.
miss.
Those are cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a few $100 there, whatever. So like at the end of the day, $1,500 all in plus ingredients. I pay on average $60 a batch. I also buy fresh yeast every time because I don't want to mess around with the age and quality of my yeast. There's enough uncertainties that I'm trying to avoid. And so, okay, we'll say $75 a batch on average for my Hefeweizen and my Dunkels. And it comes out to like $1, and a quarter a beer. And I drink, 6, 7, 8, 10 beers a week.
That,
Like it
yeah.
just
No, that's fine. Yeah.
so it's do the math. Like to me, it makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah,
So
I even told people like you can get away with almost $20. Like you could
mm,
brew like a smash beer, right?
absolutely.
And I feel like
Oh,
if you're
absolutely.
brand new and you really want to nerd out, like what does this malt taste like with this hop? Just make a smash, right? Just be
Yeah,
pretty
absolutely.
simple.
Just even do 1
Yeah,
gallon.
yeah, you for
Yeah.
sure, right? So you could again, like we said a little while ago, like this hobby can be as cheap as you want or expensive as you want. The biggest advice I can give anybody is like if you get into kegging, get into as fast as possible. Bottling sucks unless you're conditioning a beer that needs to be conditioned for a period of time. Then bottle, 2 yards content.
Right,
Uh,
and usually the people are doing that don't need the advice about bottling or
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, they already know what they're
yeah,
doing, yeah.
exactly. So
Or you're trying to, like, intentionally give it away.
for sure. Um, you
Yeah.
said you're a lone wolf brewer, right? So you don't haven't joined any clubs or anything
Yeah,
like that. I feel
no.
like so after rereading your notes, I reread them again yesterday. So I kind of disagree with that. I think you are part of a club. You're part of the Reddit club, right? So you're on there, you're
Uh,
answering questions.
yeah, right,
So
yeah,
that may not
that's
be a
true.
formal
Yeah,
paying a club, but you're still out there. You're
yeah.
still participating. You're still getting
I'm a very active
yeah.
member on
So you're
Reddit,
getting
yeah,
feedback and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, that's true.
so is there any clubs that are local to you that you just don't care to join, or do you like just kind of be a little
Yeah,
more to yourself because you are more an extra individual that you may not get along
yeah,
with?
I don't know, yeah, it's not that I don't get along, it's that I find, like, I mean, I don't I this sounds kind of narcissistic, but, like, a lot of times when I talk to people, what I say kinda goes over their head. And I'm just like, "Okay, like, the level that I'm communicating to you about is, like, so that we can have a conversation, but if, like, this is over your head, then, like, the stuff I really wanna talk about, it's, like, no chance."
Right now.
And so, that's like, if there was a analytical chemistry homebrew club, I would probably join it because then we would be nerding out all day on, like, which math spectrometer version we use to measure our hops. And it's actually funny because there's a guy that works for NSF, NSF
Hmm.
International, the company that, like, measures stuff, in the food industry and pharma and sports supplements and those things, and he lives in Michigan. He grows his own hops, and
Yeah.
he brewed his own beer, and he's huge nerd. I sat on the statistics committee with him, so he was great. He and I love to. every analytical chemistry conference, we were at the bar, so, if you start talking about hops and beer and chemistry and statistics,
Yeah, that's
you
awesome.
know, a lot of that level of detail, people would just, their eyes would glaze over, and they're like, "I just wanna drink, man." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine for you, but
Yeah, this is what we
I
want
wanna
to.
talk about the
Yeah, we
nerdy
want to do
stuff."
this thing
So,
instead.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's
yeah.
actually really cool.
So and it's not, like, intentional, but also I don't have tons of time, like, between only having the weekends
Fair
available
enough. Yeah.
and then, I have other stuff to do, like the astronomy and, my wife yells at me for enough hobbies and, the kids have their stuff, they would, dance and violin, yada, yada.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's true. I'll say so. Like I said earlier, all my kids are grown for the most part. When I got into hobby 5 years ago, so my youngest would have been what he did 16, 17. So he was already kind of
Fun.
doing his own little thing and driving around and stuff like that. So
It's too cool for
oh yeah,
dad,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that happens. That sucks, but it's life. And so I joined. So the first club I joined, I want to say the members had like 400 years of institutional knowledge. They were all 30,
Wow.
40-year veterans. They're all up there in
How many
age.
people are in it roughly?
So that club, when I first started, there was probably a solid 20 people there for the first,
Okay.
for about the first year. And sadly, like I said, they're all up in age. They're all like they were in their 70s. I was probably one of the youngest members there. So sadly, they started dying
Yeah.
off and stuff like that. And the club started to dwindle down. So there's not that many people in that homebrew club, but there's a newer one that probably started in 2018, 2019 on Facebook that says there's 350 of us in there. That's a lie. It's probably 30 to 40 strong. Every meeting there may be a dozen to
Right.
15 that can actually show up. I go all the time because I want the feedback.
Yeah.
The thing is, and a lot of people kind of agree with this statement. You give away free beer, everybody loves it. But there's a few people in the homebrew club that are brutally honest, and that's what I want. I want to make
Yeah,
better
right, it's hard to
stuff.
find people
I
like
want
that.
better stuff,
Yeah,
right? So
every time I give someone one of my beers, I'm like, "Listen, even if you don't like this, that's completely fine. You literally can't hurt my feelings. Just tell me the honest opinion, what you like, what you don't like, what
yeah,
you taste, what you don't taste. Like, that's all I
yeah,
want."
yeah.
So,
There's
and
that
it's hard to
too,
find
and
that. Some people
they don't want to tell you.
people are trying to be
Don't want to hurt your feelings,
nice.
and I get that. It's
Yeah.
just kind of how we all grew up, right? I mean, that's definitely how I
Sure,
grew up,
yeah.
anyways.
It's being
Yeah,
polite.
in the
Yeah.
'80s and stuff like that. So like I have one gentleman. He's a great guy. He's always honest with me all the time. He has a great uh, uh taste for beer. There's this woman in
Mhm.
my club as well too, and she can pick up any off flavor in the world. I swear to gosh, she can. She is so
Wow,
good
good.
at it, and
She's a
she is
super
yeah,
sensitive,
and she's
super
super
taster,
nice
yeah.
about it too. She
Yeah.
says, "I'm picking up this." She can't tell you like maybe how to fix it, but she can tell you what's wrong. And
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's
her
smart.
husband, who is a
Yeah.
brilliant home brewer, which I hopefully I'll be able to interview him here soon. He can kind of tell you what you might have done wrong. You give him like your recipe, he'll go through your recipe and you can kind of make pinpoint stuff out, which I think is really, really helpful. Because if I want to remake that beer, I can be like, okay, I'll change this instead. So I think I'm going to jump on down to, let's see, let's get into some of the astronomy stuff. Cause like I said, my son listens
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
this
Oh, okay,
podcast.
yeah.
So let's kind of talk a little bit about, let's talk about like what is exoplanet photometry
Photometry.
and your
Yeah.
observatory that you have.
Yeah, so, photometry is just measuring the brightness of a thing.
Oh, okay.
So, for photometry, it's usually, for in the astronomy phase, it's measuring the brightness of stars. So, for the exoplanets, the way it works is, there's a method of detection of exoplanets called the transit method, where if you imagine a star is like a
Yeah,
circle
yeah, yeah.
and it emits a certain amount of
Uh-huh.
light and the camera can pick it up. Well, if an exoplanet comes past and blocks some of that light, the star is now not as bright to the
Uh-huh.
camera as it was before and after the transit. And so if you graph out, brightness of the star versus time, what ends up happening is it's like bright, 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 not bright, not bright, not bright, 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 because the planet is passing in front of the star and blocking that. And if you make careful, precision, calibrated measurements, you can measure that and generate light curves. That's the shape of that curve I
Yeah.
was just talking about. And you can learn stuff about the what they call ephemeris of the planet, which is like the orbital parameters, the size, the gravity. Sometimes it's composition, it's period, how fast is it going around the star? Is it an eccentric orbit or is it a more perfect circle orbit type like that? So there's lots of stuff that you can do with that. So I like to do that for fun because that's like I like
Uh-huh.
science. And so my gear is kind of expensive, but I don't want to put it together, calibrate it, use it, shut it down, move it in the house every night. It's just too big a pain in the butt. So basically, I just built a big old shed in my yard, and I think it's right over here. It's that thing right there. It's got a
Oh,
garden
okay.
attached to it. So
Yeah.
that big triangle thing at the top is the roof. And every day that I want to use it, I just go out there and there's a rope. I just pull the roof open, the whole roof
Yeah,
slides
that's cool.
off, and the scope is permanently inside and it just points around. It's all robotic, so I just from the computer say, go to this target, do these number of images under this filter for this long, this type, and it'll just do it robotically. And then the next morning I can work up the data. So I
That's
do
so cool.
exoplanets. I've also done asteroids. You can do things like comets and stuff
Mhm.
too. So I haven't tried that. It's a little bit trickier to do comets, but because comets are moving relative to the background, whereas the stars don't. The stars are the background. But yeah, I've been doing that for I don't know 5, 6, 10 years now. But it's cool because in addition to the photometry part of it, you can do what we call pretty pictures, which is just like
Okay,
astrophotography.
yeah.
So you could just take pictures of things in the sky. So I like galaxy, like spiral, face on spiral
Mhm.
galaxies, where you could see the spiral arms. Those are my favorites. And so I love to take pictures of those, especially in the interacting galaxies. So galaxies that are smashing into each other, they have like, you could see the parts going flying off, and when you take the picture and it's very deep, like, I don't know how much you know about photography, but I'll do exposure times of up to 60 minutes
Holy
sometimes. So the
crap,
shutter will
yeah.
stay open for 60
Yeah.
minutes straight. Yeah, so the way it works for this, because obviously you can only image when the sun's down. So if you have 8 hours of darkness and you're taking 1 hour exposures, at best you're getting 8 frames a night.
Mhm.
So when you so you do that every night for multiple nights in a row, and you can get hundreds of hours stacked up together in an image. And then when you mathematically smash them together, you can drop out the fuzzy ones, there's a cloud, or there's a satellite, or whatever, and then you can take only the best frames, the best of the data, put them together, and then you can get a really pretty picture. So I do a lot of that too, mostly just for fun. I do have, some of my images printed, like my daughter, when she was my oldest, when she was little, room theme was
Okay.
elephants, and so there's a nebula called the elephant's trunk nebula because it looks like a little thing and like a little hook. And so I spent, I don't know, 60 hours imaging it, and then another
Oh,
60
that's
hours
so
processing
cool.
it. And then I printed it out on metal and hung it up on the wall so it looks like a little elephant trunk.
That's so
So yeah, it's
neat.
just really cool
Yeah.
stuff to do. And space, like I'm a nihilist, so it's like when I look up and I see space, and reminds me of our place in the cosmos, which is nowhere and nothing. It's like, it's like, "Yep, this is it. This is what I got. This is good beer. Alright, good night."
Always got the
A
beer.
lot of people can't handle it. Existential dread, that's what people think of, but, for me, space is calming because it's not always the same in detail, but if you look up, the right stars are in the right place, and when Jupiter's over there, you're like, "Oh, there he is." 6 months later, it's like, "Oh, now he's over there," and, like, there's, like, this order to it that I personally like. So I love to go out to the desert. It's so calm in the desert in the night. It's so wonderful. If you ever get a chance to come out west, spend a night in the desert, whether it's Death Valley or the deserts of Arizona or New Mexico. I have a little tool that I bring with me when I travel around. I measure the sky brightness to see how bright it is.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I've been to some of the darkest places in the country. So down south, where my other buddies have their observatories, in the southeastern Arizona desert, it's so dark out there that the sky is brighter, more or less bright every night, more difference because of space weather
Mm,
than because of actual light conditions.
okay.
So depending upon what the sun is up
Yeah.
to, the sun throws off, cosmic rays and CMEs and stuff like that towards us, and then it interacts with the Earth's ionosphere and the magnetic fields and stuff like that. And so, like just a couple weeks ago, you probably saw you had northern lights all the way down to like Florida,
Yes,
so you
there's a
might have
certain
saw them.
filter on your phone, we can see them here, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like, they're in Southern Arizona, so they're another, I don't know, 800,000 miles south of that, and they could still pick it up on the horizon like a faint red glow that shouldn't be there. So this place is dark. I mean, I've been places where when you put your hand out in front of you, you can't see your hand. It is dark.
So I've been some caves
So,
here that are like that. They turn the lights off in caves, and
yeah,
it's
yes,
scary. And also how
yeah, and it's
dark
like,
it is. Like
"Oh,
there is
man, that
nothing.
is"
Like you're
yeah,
waving your hand in front of your face, and you just feel the
uh-huh,
wind. There's
you would never
nothing. You're
know.
like, but then they
Yeah,
tell you it's like, well, if
yeah.
you're down here for like a week with no light, like you essentially go blind. Like, wow, that's
Wow,
freaky too.
that's crazy because your eyes adapt like
Yeah,
that, yeah,
yeah, because like I guess because there's
yeah.
like one of them. I think it's in Bristol, Tennessee. They have fish, and there's a like under a lake inside this cave, and all the fish are blind. Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, right, yeah, it's super interesting, like, we don't need
Yeah,
eyes,
you
can't
can't
see
see
anything
anything new.
anyway.
Yeah, so just pitch
Yeah,
black. Yeah, so
right,
that's pretty neat. So another hobby I
sure.
don't think you should start into, wink, wink, is ham radio because you probably get a kick out of like the whole ionosphere and the northern lights, and
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like if when you call on the northern lights, which is kind of hard for you, but if you went back up north and you did it, it sounds like alien talk because your
Really?
voice gets so
Yeah.
scrambled, and people try to pick it up and all that kind of stuff. So you could really,
Oh,
if you
that
want
would
to
be
nerd out
interesting.
on something
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
so I got my technician
yeah.
license, I think last year, not hard test, pretty simple.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
just study the app. Basically, you just memorize the questions and answers, and you get your license. It's not until you get your
Sure.
extra, you have to do math. That's like the level, that's the
Right.
like, and it's not the highest level, was the highest amateur radio license you can get. There's other things you can get commercial, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's a fun little hobby. Not a lot of people really talk around here on it. I don't have any HF stuff, so I can't really get too far out of my region, but it's kind of fun. Again, just another hobby you shouldn't get into.
Yeah, that's no, I love all that kinda stuff, I really do, yeah. I thought about doing radio astronomy on Jupiter for quite a long time.
Okay, yeah.
My yard's not big enough, though, for the size of the scope I would need.
Right. Yeah.
I mapped it out, and I was like, "Ah, I need, like, 10 more yards."
Right. Yeah. I think you can even bounce.
Maybe one day.
So if you have a ham radio license, and your kids might get a kick out of this, you can talk to when the International Space Station is over your place. You
Yes,
talk to them because they
yes,
all have their license.
yeah,
So that's cool. You can
yeah,
bounce signals off the moon
yeah.
and all this other kind of crazy
Yeah, we
stuff.
were at dinner the other day, and I was like, "There it is." My girls are like, "What?" I'm like, "That's the International Space
Yeah.
Station." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "There's people
Yeah.
right there on that dock
Yep.
flying away from us." Yeah. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." Sometimes I think they don't believe me, but, when they're older, I'll prove it to them, and then they'll believe me.
Right. Okay.
Kids, they never believe me.
No, they don't. Well, if they get too much older, they won't even want to listen to you. So there's that stage too.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get to like some rapid fire questions. These are the first things that come to your mind. If
Sure.
you want to explain a little bit more, go
Okay.
for it. It's totally fine. First one is hazy or clear beers. You do like bottle or can. Favorite beer glass.
Ooh. So, I do like the tulip
Hmm.
glasses a lot, but that's because I am partial to the Belgians, but I'm I'm training my wife to learn what beers go in what
There you go.
glasses,
Yeah.
and so when I'm like, "Can you give me a beer?" and she's like, "Which one?" and I'll be like, "The Hefeweizen," and she'll be like, "Is this the right glass?" and I'm like, "Yes." You know? And then sometimes she, like, trolls me and she, like, gives me the wrong glass on purpose, and I just give her a face like, "What are you doing? Don't be putting a dimpled pimple Hefeweizen. That is a Czech Pilsner glass, and you know it." Like, I'm a little bit of a picky when it comes to the glasses. It probably doesn't matter that much, but it's a little bit of
No,
fun, so,
heck yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome.
But I go, you know what? Goodwill. For me, go to
Yeah.
Goodwill and just look for, like, the random one-off glass because, like, I don't need a whole set. I'm the only one that uses these
Yeah.
things. I
Ditto.
don't need 9 Hefeweizen
Yeah.
glasses. I need
Yeah.
2, you know? So I have a very eclectic beer glass style because I just go to Goodwill and get ones that fit the style, and they're not always there, but most of them like a dollar, so who cares?
100%. Yep.
You
Yep.
know?
That's what I.
Yeah, it's my
So
jam.
someone are
It's
that
just
way.
glass, like, there's nothing wrong with it.
Who was it? So someone that just went out of business not too long ago. Actually been few years on. I think about it. I think it was Steinmart. I think they went out of business, but they had like a whole set
Oh,
of
yeah.
like beer glasses. So I just bought
Yeah.
the whole kit for like
Oh, pick
10
them up.
bucks or whatever it was. So
Mhm.
I have them all.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
And they're great. I mean, they're not
Yes,
super. I
exactly.
wish they were like. So this is like a Wiseacre, which is a brewery out of Memphis. So it's
Yeah.
like a traditional like bar,
Pint.
thick,
Yeah.
thick
Yeah.
glass. So the other ones upstairs
Yeah.
are really thin,
Well,
so they
thinner.
don't hold
Yeah.
like the coldness for very long. So if a beer I want to
Yeah.
drink more slowly, I think I drink a little quicker because it warms up too much, and those flavors aren't that great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
a brewing trend you would like to see go away, or a beer trend you would like to see go away?
So you know what? Honestly, I worked in supplements for
Okay.
9 years, and one thing that I think I've learned with humans in
Hmm.
general is that humans love trends.
Oh yeah.
Because if you look at, like, clothing, right? Like, I don't know if you noticed, but, like, the Jinko
Hmm.
jeans are
Yep.
kinda coming back.
90s. Yep.
Mom jeans came for a while, like yeah, you remember
Yeah.
that '90s stuff,
Yeah.
I do too. That stuff's coming back now, the high-waisted ugly
Yeah.
stuff is coming back. Like, I think humans like trends and things that come and go,
Hmm.
like the IPA trend from
Yeah.
recently, the hazy trend, like, The sours before that, that's in the beer side. But in the supplement industry, we saw the same thing. It
Okay.
was like, oh, the muscle tone, and everyone's taking
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
creatine.
yeah.
And then it's like before that, it's like everyone's eating mushrooms. And like before that, it was everyone's taking this random plant extract, and ginseng is the new hot thing. Like I think humans just naturally trend
Mhm.
together. Like that's our like that's how we're socially built. We're social animals. And so I don't think there's ever a trend that's gonna die and go away. It's just gonna fade
Like,
away
come
and
back
then it'll
later
come
on.
back later at some point. Yeah, and I think that's gonna be I hope that soon the wheat beer trend happens because that's my jam. Like finally everyone's making wheat beers. Like when I go to most places, it's like, oh, we have 9 IPAs and one wheat and
Yeah.
one malty thing. And I'm like, can I get a not hop forward beer, please? And they're like, well, I don't really know what that is. I'm like, okay, I'll take this random hazy you
Yeah.
have. So yeah, I think there's no escaping that,
No, there is. And I
unfortunately.
have a couple buddies who own their own craft brews around this region, and one definitely has a very big board. He covers the gamut as best as he can, but of course at the end of the day he needs to make money. So, and my
Right, right. So I don't
other friends
blame
the
them.
same way
Yeah,
too. He has more IPAs on board because that's what people want still in this region. So he's still making
yeah,
no, he still has like
right.
his flagship lagers, and I think he has a porter and like something else that like are the flagship beers, but he has a lot of IPAs because that's what people want. Northeast Tennessee, basically from Knoxville, which is like 2 hour drive all the way to where I'm at, we still get a lot of visitors. Like a lot of people come to this region. We get bombarded. We've had a lot of people move here from like California, Florida, New York, and just they're so used to that West Coast IPA and some the hazy, so they these
Mhm.
places they have to supply that stuff. But kind of like
Right,
you,
yeah.
I judge craft breweries on their lagers or their wheat or pilsner or whatever. A very simple. No, you can't hide anything in those beers. And if
Right,
those taste
yes.
off, the what are you hiding and all these other beers that you're making? Because you can hide a lot of stuff in
Yeah.
West Coast and
Mhm.
East, Northeast, or
Yeah.
Midwest, or all that stuff. You can hide stuff in it. I just learned this too, and which makes sense. Like, and you probably already know this, but like, even if they make a bad beer, they'll keep blending it until it's a sellable beer. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I guess that does make
Yes.
sense because you're
Yes.
making a 30-gallon batch. You just can't throw that away because I'm not really sure how much that
Right.
costs you, right? I mean, if you're making $6
Mhm.
for 5 gallons or $60 for five
Mhm.
gallons, times that by 30, well, that's a lot
Mhm.
of money, right?
Plus you gotta pay people to
Yeah,
do it
right. Yeah,
now.
so like,
It's not just your time for
yeah, so like,
free.
okay, I guess that makes sense. Like, but still, I mean, that
Yeah.
would be like, well,
Okay.
then I'm kind of curious, like, how much money do you put into that beer to make it palatable to sell it? Like, so I mean,
Right, yeah, I don't know.
I am kind of curious. I need to ask some of this question. Want to get back on, but anyways, let's get back to like
Yeah, yeah.
some more
Yeah, yeah.
science nerdy stuff here. So, um, so so uh so again, this is like kind of red flag, like this or that. So brewing chemistry or marine biology. So I guess what I mean by like marine biology. So like your reef tank.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's hard. I'm going scuba diving in Cozumel next week, so I mean, it's I don't know. My retirement plan is go scuba diving, like, in Fiji and Micronesia, so
That'd be awesome.
that is a hard one, I don't know. But then I I'm still gonna be drinking, so I don't know. That's can I do
Sure,
Thai?
yeah,
Can I
it
do a
could be
Thai
diet for
now?
sure, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
alright, yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
that's hard, yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so the hardest hobby is it brewing, keeping, or astronomy?
Reef
Yeah,
keeping.
I couldn't even
Yeah. It's
imagine.
very technical and, you're keeping live things to get in a box that are not meant to live that way.
Oh,
So you
yeah,
gotta do a lot of chemistry and
yeah,
you have to babysit it. The big and the smaller the system, the harder it is. So the 220-gallon is actually easier because it's more forgiving to mistakes. Whereas a 40-gallon or a 60-gallon, like, you mess up, everything dies.
right.
And sometimes it's not even you messed up, is you bought something that's contaminated, wipe the tank.
That would suck.
That happens a lot, and then people leave the hobby. Yeah, then they leave the hobby because 'cause they're like, "Oh, it's too hard," and it's like, "Well, it is."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say brief keeping's the hardest.
Not too far off topic. You remember that show on the TV where there's a group of guys that would go in and build these really elaborate fish tanks?
Tanked?
Tanks, yeah.
Tanked?
I watched something
Tanked,
like
yeah.
many years after the fact, like all these tanks just did not last at all, really. They just
Those guys it was for a show, that did not do
yeah,
a
I
good
was like,
job.
wow, that kind of sucks. So I just felt bad for all the animals or the sea life, whatever we call them. They just perished because of
Right,
this, right?
yeah.
So I was like,
put stuff in there that's not supposed to be in there. They're putting predators with prey in
Yeah.
the same
Oh my gosh,
confined
that was just
environment.
crazy. Yeah,
Not,
I mean, the
yeah,
stuff they did was really
they really
pretty
shouldn't have been
looking, but
allowed to do that.
yeah,
Yeah, it looked
yeah.
cool, but they should have took disassembled those tanks right after the show was done. Is what
Ah,
they
fair
should have
enough.
done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
That
Yeah,
would have been
yeah,
the
because they could
perfect.
have just had like a studio just mocked it up every episode, right? Yeah.
Right.
So they didn't have
Yeah.
to go to someone's house. Yeah, for
Right.
sure, 100%. So you have all these
Yeah.
hobbies. This is just kind of like a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
So you have all these hobbies. Does your
Sure.
family think you're crazy?
My
Your
wife
wife
does.
does?
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. I think all wives are supposed to
Yeah.
think that way about us, anyways. Because I have a lot of hobbies too.
Yeah.
I've mellowed out. Again, I'm getting older. I enjoy home brewing, and this podcast thing is definitely is taking up. Like, this is another full time job for me right here. I love doing this stuff. So let's see. Is there a most underrated brewing ingredient that you would recommend to people?
Underrated. Hmm. No, I don't think so. I think everyone. I think it's like I use a lot of my public knowledge from what Reddit people say
Yeah,
because that's where
I
I
get
spend
that.
most of
Yeah,
my public information comes from. But yeah, I mean, I think probably the malts. I think people don't take the malts as seriously as they could.
right.
Because the difference between them is a little bit more nuanced. Like, how many people look at those charts that have like the little
Hmm.
stars that say, "Oh, it's more this and that," and actually know what that means? I mean, it takes some skill to understand what it
Yeah.
means. I mean, how many people even taste their own malt?
Oh, yeah.
Do when how that would be a great poll. Like, do you chew on each malt that you buy, every lot, to see, "Oh, this is Pilsner. Does taste like Pilsner."
Right.
A lot of people probably don't do
So
that.
I
I don't
so
always do it.
I try
I
to,
should. I
especially
don't.
if it's a style I've never made before or hops I've never used before. I at least try to taste it. If I get dry yeast, I will even taste the yeast because there's always like a few like kind of
Okay.
left over in like in the little bag anyway. So I'll taste it
Yeah.
to see if I can pick it up in the beer
Mhm.
itself.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure you probably do with like liquid. I'm sure there's probably just a little bit of liquid. You probably just taste and see what it tastes like and
Yeah.
get an idea. But
Mhm. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool. I can't necessarily pick up the yeast itself after the fact, but again, I don't think my palate is that
Yeah.
refined.
They change so much though, because 'cause they're like dormant state when you're tasting them, and then they
Well, yeah, that's
grow, and
true
then they
too. Yeah,
ride, so the yeast that are actually doing the work in your beer is not really what you're
yeah, yeah,
tasting, so I don't know how much merit
yeah,
there is
fair
to
enough.
that. It's an interesting
Yeah.
idea, but yeah.
Is there an overrated brewing technique?
Overrated?
I've got some really interesting
No, I don't
answers
know,
on this one.
yeah. No, I don't know, like, I think like, so I read a lot of brewing books, all pretty much all the ones
Right.
that I could
Yeah.
find. And, like, Gordon Biersch's, I think, was pretty good. Some of them were outdated rather than overrated. But, like, there's just different different strokes for different folks. So, what works for you might work because what you do and how you do
Hmm.
it, and it's not gonna translate onto someone else's system, like a 3-ton system versus a bag system. Um but so I don't think overrated is the right word. I think it's just your process and procedure needs to match your equipment
Yes.
so that it works. And not all recipes can just be plug and play to the different methodologies.
Yeah. No, that's very true too. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's one gentleman I interviewed. He was like, don't trust some random recipe on the internet. Do it just because they said it works for them necessarily doesn't work for you. And
Yes. Oh, that goes for everything I
right,
use.
yeah. And to go back to the other point about like equipment, that's why I've not bought like an all-in-one because I'm already used to buy propane burner. I know how it works. I
Right.
understand my brew in the
Yeah, you got the
bag.
details kinks out.
The
Yep.
only
Yes.
thing, the only reason I would buy one is because the winters. We don't get like super cold in Tennessee, but this year was for, I mean, we had 0
Yeah.
days, which is not common for where I'm at. But still, like if I wanted to brew, I would have to, I would be fighting in my garage the whole time. And
Yeah.
that would have been a
Right.
horrible
Yeah.
experience. So that
Yeah,
would
that
be kind of
sucks.
nice. I do have a couple of buddies that have all the ones. I would definitely, they said I could come over and try it out and just see if I do kind of like it.
That
So it
could
kind
be,
of gives me
yeah.
an idea. One has
That's
a
a good
grain
idea.
father, the one has a claw master, to be a claw hammer supply. Another one has a
Yeah.
Viper or something like that, VEVOR or whatever it is. It's like a it's like a
Yeah, yeah.
$300. So like so you have like a
Mhm.
$300, $500, and like $1,000 machine, right? So I definitely need to
Right, yeah.
find some time to go to work that
Yeah,
out
you should
and
check it out.
see
You might find out you like it, and therefore
exactly.
you brew more.
So this is kind of like we're going to get into like the wrap up section here. You've answered so many questions already. You've been a terrific guest. Thank
Cool.
you for very much for
Oh,
reaching out, man.
thanks. Yeah,
I've had a
appreciate it.
blast. This has been a good
Yeah,
time.
no worries. Yeah, no worries. We're almost on
Yeah,
2
I
hours
know this
now,
is
so no
crazy. Yeah,
worries.
I know, right?
We're good, dude. Finally cooled down. It's like 80 out. It feels
I
so
bet it
good.
does.
Finally. It was hot already. I was sweating. Yeah.
So just some general advice for somebody that's not doesn't have like a scientific background like you have, and maybe doesn't want to get like super overwhelmed, but they want to get some more knowledge. Like, where should they
Mhm.
start? Should they start with some of the books like you mentioned before, like maybe like the Gordon
Yeah,
Strong or
so it
something?
depends on yeah, exactly, so it depends on how you learn. Because I used to teach chemistry,
Okay,
so m read this book is not a solution for everyone, especially if you're under 30 nowadays. Um, watch this video is more people's style. Listen to this podcast, more people's style. Um, One thing I picked up in the reef keeping hobby was that it's almost better to find someone who you know and follow their advice rather than trying to follow the average advice of the crowd in
well, that's
general.
brilliant.
Because then you get, 30 different people and 50 different opinions, and you're like, I don't know which one to believe, and I'm not educated enough to even know which ones I should be ruling out, which ones I shouldn't. So it's like, go to a local homebrew club if you can, or pick the apartment brewer. I love
Oh
that
yeah.
guy. Pick the Clawhammer channel. I used to like Homebrew for Life. I
Oh
don't think he's still making videos too much
no, he
anymore, but
does.
the Barrage cast,
Yep, that
right?
was great.
And just like for me, the way I learned is just, watch 4 or 5 of those different
Yeah,
ones and just kind of look for trends. What are they all doing similar? What is all in common? And then pick a style or a person and just try to follow and mimic them and then slowly iterate on that. Watching videos is probably the easiest way nowadays. If you want to go the book route, absolutely start with, How to Brew, John Palmer's books, Charlie Papazane's, The Complete Joy of Classic, right? Definitely outdated, but it's a great if you know nothing, it's great to start from the back. Like, here's what it was in the 70s. Like, what? They used to do it that way? And I'm
mm.
like, there are no computers? Like, they didn't have digital
Right.
thermometers? No instant reads? Yeah. Right. They didn't have
Nope,
that
not at
stuff. It's
all.
like to me, I'm like, how did people live in the 70s? But uh but I try to do complex things like this. So, I was complaining about my precision of my thermometer being point 0.1. Is like those guys are like, you had thermometers?
Right.
So yeah, so I guess it would be, look for trends for what everyone's doing in common and then try to pick one person and follow their system and just optimize on yourself. Don't hop randomly and wildly to different things. Just kind of be a little bit more narrow and
Yeah,
focused.
that's a brilliant answer. I
And
love it,
you
man.
always hit me up on Reddit too. Yeah. I'm always on
Oh,
Reddit.
yeah, okay, yeah, so let's kinda jump to that real quick. So if people do wanna reach out to you, like, what is your handle on Reddit?
669 because it's a very, very old
There you
handle.
go. Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm in the homebrew Reddit all the time. I'm in reef keeping. So, what is the name of the subreddit for the reef keeping one? Reef tanks, r slash
Okay.
reef tanks, r slash astronomy. I used to be a moderator for astrophotography many years ago. I'm a moderator on a couple other politics subs. So I'm pretty always on Reddit. They can message me. In fact, it's funny. I have videos on YouTube still of when I used to teach chemistry. So I just leave my lectures up, and so every like 6 months, I'll get a message randomly on Reddit like, "I saw this post from 4 years ago. It said you had this video on YouTube. Can you send me the link?" And I'm just like, "There you go, bud." It's just like an old organic chemistry lecture video of mine, and they're like, oh, they found a random post that
Yeah,
I made 10
that's
years ago,
hilarious.
and they're like, "Can I have this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, man."
So I had
So I
so
don't
speaking of
care.
YouTube, I started another YouTube channel a long time ago. Basically, it was a brain dump of all the programming that I've done. So I did a whole Java course. So I went through like how I learned Java all the way up to like object oriented programming and blah 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 blah. So I threw
Mhm.
that out there. I
Yeah.
threw it up there. It was mainly just for me, in case I ever got a Java programming job. I can go back and be like, okay,
Yeah, like a
how do I
reference,
do this
yeah.
again? Because I threw all my notes away.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
actually had a couple people reach out to me. They use it in some university in like Indiana as a reference. Like, so the teacher was using this and use that. I'm like going,
Nice.
and it wasn't even that good.
Yeah.
Like, videos were crappy. The font was super
Right.
tiny.
Right,
I
yeah.
didn't zoom in on anything. I'm like, hey, cool, man.
Right,
That
yeah,
worked for
yeah.
you. All right, buddy. I love it.
Yeah.
So it was nice to
Nice.
hear that though. It kind of made me feel good. Like I helped 1% of the world, which I think we all need to do a little
Sure, yeah,
more of.
that's yeah, exactly. We're trying to help
Yeah.
each other, that's the goal.
So just a few more questions, and then I'll let you go.
Sure. Yep.
Let's see, where was I? Okay, so if is there someone else that you would like me to interview next?
Ooh,
Jot that down.
that's a good question. I don't know. I'm sure there's names that if I kind of poked around in r slash
Yeah.
homebrewing, I'd be like, oh, it's that guy. But I don't have any off the top of my head because honestly, I don't pay super close attention to the usernames of the
That's
Redditors,
fine.
until I've been around. Like there's like probably 2 or 3 people on Reddit that I've spoken to
Yeah.
directly through Reddit that I'm like, you and I are the guy in this sub always answering all the questions. So I'm like, and usually we're on the same page, but occasionally we argue. But yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head, but if I see one, I'll forward it
Okay,
your way.
perfect. Yeah, yeah. Because I know when I went to that homebrewing Reddit, like I think I made my first like initial post. It was like they got blocked, got banned, all. I had to like earn karma. I'm like, what the heck is karma? I've never posted. I reread it. I don't do anything.
Yeah.
So I went in there. I'm just
Oh, okay, then,
answering
yeah. You're a
all
lurker.
sorts
That's your
of
problem.
questions. I'm like, yeah, you do it this way. I think
Right,
that's kind of
yeah.
cool, but if you thought about this, it's just make not like
Yeah, right.
one hundred
Build up the
percent,
enough
yeah, and
necessary
so I
karma
could
so you
actually
could
post it out
post.
there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, now I can do it. And then when I went to do like an update post, I got blocked. Doesn't have enough karma. Like,
Mhm.
here we go again. Just start answering questions and
Mhm.
all that fun stuff. It was kind of fun
Yeah.
though. So.
I have a super old account with a billion karma, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm
That's
lucky.
perfect.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, and for like the last question, is there a recipe you would like to share with the audience? So what I've been doing, when this podcast goes live, I would
Oh,
take your recipe and I have a Google
yeah.
Doc with every guest that I've
Okay.
had, so they can go, okay, I'm gonna go to Jay's.
Okay. Yeah.
Jay as this
Yeah.
Belgian double
Okay.
that he
Right.
uses marshmallow
Mhm.
cream in because it imparts blah 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 blah
Right, right.
whatever something.
Random
Yeah.
yep.
So
Alright, so here's my trick on that one. I've done a lot of other people's recipes, I do random recipes, I haven't worked on too many of my
okay,
own, but honestly, I could say Mean Brews Matt from Mean
okay,
Brews, what he does is he kinda statistically breaks down the gold medal winner or the medal
yeah,
winners of a given beer and goes through the malt bill, goes through the hops bill, and then comes up with his own. I don't think I've ever made a recipe of his that was bad or, like, not really
okay,
good, and I think every single one of them that I know I didn't mess up have been fantastic. So I wouldn't plug myself here, I would be plugging Mean Brews on, YouTube. If you're on Brewfather, you can find him, just Google, or just search for Mean
okay,
Brews
yeah,
on Brewfather. Every single one of his recipes is great. I made his triple, I think, 3 times now. That's the one I have on tap right now. His double is the one I have on tap right now. Um, his Dunkel was really good, like, his Hefeweizen was really good.
yeah.
Those are my go-to. That would be my jam. I'd say steal his
Okay,
recipes.
no, no,
And you could buy them from Bacchus and Barleycorn, which I haven't done because I have a local whole shop that does a good job for me, but it's a one click, buy it now, here you go, here's all the
that's
things.
cool.
So I would plug him
Okay,
for sure.
that's perfect. I'll definitely try to. I'll just probably just grab his little profile and just throw it up there.
Yeah,
Recommended by
yeah,
Jay.
for sure. Yeah, no, he's great. I love his videos. They're nice and nerdy. There's Excel sheets in it, so it's my jam. And then the beer is
There you
fantastic.
go. Well, Jay, it's been a pleasure meeting and chit chatting with you, picking your
Yes,
brain.
thanks, man.
I had a fun
Yeah, of course.
blast. Maybe we can hook up again in the
Yeah,
future and kind of see where you're at. See, maybe you're making
yeah.
recipes and or a new hobby.
You got my email address. If your son wants to talk about astronomy, feel free to have him send me an email, and I'll tell him I do. I'll show him. I'll send him my website link and
Yeah,
stuff like
he's
that. So,
a studying nuclear science, so he's definitely a science nerd
nice,
like yourself. So you guys can nerd out where I'd be like,
excellent.
okay, good job, kid. Love you. All right,
Great.
Jay. I'll see you later.
All right,
Yep,
man. Take
bye.
it easier. Bye.